Hey everybody, welcome to Hang Up right here on the line. I'm Matt Dillahunty. This is my weekly Wednesday show, and I'm not alone, which is always a much better way to do this stuff. I hope you guys are all doing well. I've got a couple of topics to, hit on real quick, and then we're going to get right into it. This show is generally about whatever I'm hung up on since the last time I was on, which is usually a week ago. Sometimes it's two, but I've been doing a lot of things to kind of help ease anxiety for myself and Arden. We are both kind of alternating between paying really good attention to what's going on, and then doing things that have nothing to do with the world and news and what's falling apart. As a matter of fact, Arden what the hell? Arden has decided to experiment some with bird watching. So we got her a good pair of binoculars, and you can go out and walk, and there's a lot of variety of birds in our area. I don't know how it compares to other areas, but we're just like at the very beginning of it, and she's focused in on it. This is the sort of thing people like she and I do. I mean, we're both kind of obsessive learners. And if you dig into one subject, which we will do, you can build up a wealth of knowledge. And then eventually you kind of either hit a wall where you have to dig in much more or shift focus, or you find a new thing to kind of focus on temporarily, because the excitement of learning in part is amplified when you're learning and really understanding a whole bunch of new stuff in a relatively short time, where the effort versus reward is still kind of low. I mean, you're getting rewarded at a great rate when you're first learning something, and that's been fun. This show is a mixed bag. We're here to talk about what's going on in the world of politics, but also what we think about various religious ideas and supernatural claims. It's not just the Sunday show, so you don't just have to call in and defend your God belief. If you have some other supernatural belief, or maybe Wednesdays, we're kind of okay with a little bit of discussion about like bong rip theology, but we're still really looking for people to defend the things that we don't agree with them on. And so if you're not quite ready to say, I believe this, and here's why I think others should agree with me, you definitely don't want to be calling, during the Sunday shows. But this one might be a little better. The Wednesday night show might be a good opportunity to call in and say, here's kind of what I'm thinking. What questions would you ask about this to kind of help direct the search? Or am I understanding your guys' position correctly? And by the way, we don't all have the same position for the same reasons. As a matter of fact, this Friday, Jimmy and I are going to be doing a Cus I Wanna. And there may be something that Jimmy and I actually disagree on that we're going to talk about during then. And then, I don't know if you have a graphic for the Zoom thing. You do. So if you're a patron of the line, which you can become by going to patreon.com/calltheline, this is where this Friday, we're going to be doing a patron exclusive Zoom call at 5 p.m. Central. It's going to run. We're going to aim for an hour. We may go a little bit over because we have to go to a musical in Austin later that night that we had already got tickets for. I don't even know what the musical is. I just know I want to do the Zoom thing, and then I want to go out with Arden to see a musical. So, and in the news front, it continues to pour rain here in Texas. And for those who aren't aware, last week I talked about or Monday or Sunday, I talked about the incredible flooding that happened over the weekend. And the death toll is well over 100 now, of either confirmed dead or missing, including like over 20 girls who were at a summer camp in Kerrville. And the summer camp, like a lot of these summer camps, take place along the banks of rivers. Now, if you've never been to Texas and you've never gone out to see the various rivers, they're not particularly wide. They're not particularly deep. They are nice little relaxed areas. You set up camp there. You have camp grounds there. These are structures or facilities that are used regularly. This was an absolutely freakish flood. Now, there's some questions and concerns about whether or not the government did a good enough job in warning people, giving them enough advance warning, and monitoring the situation for this, and whether or not budget cuts might have affected it. We don't know. There'll be some investigations going on. It may be that everybody did the absolute best that you could do, and this is just a freakish flood. So I don't want to send people down that route. But some of you may be familiar with Destiny, not the video game or the concept, but this guy, Stephen Bonnell II, who's also known as the omni-liberal. Evidently, he does a lot of debates on Twitter and Twitch and who knows, I don't know all the other platforms. He and I have met and had one quick debate, except that it really wasn't much of a debate. We were there to debate other people at this Modern Day Debates production. And we had also agreed to sit down and talk about where we differ on the subject of abortion. And as it turns out, if you go watch the debate, Stephen didn't disagree with me on anything with regard to a matter of fact. It was just, yes, this is all fine and dandy, but he prefers a different strategy. And it's one that I think has flaws in it. And I explained why. That's no big deal. Other than that, I don't really know the guy. But I've been seeing and hearing things that are more concerning. Like when he suggested that the IDF guys that he was talking to should go ahead and keep committing war crimes, but just stop filming themselves. That's a slight paraphrase, and I don't want to misrepresent it because that's not what I came here to necessarily talk about. But things like that had some of us concerned if the omni-liberal, which is a pretentious self-label, was moving more and more towards MAGA area and things like that. But unfortunately, in addition to being a little problematic there, he decided to comment on the flooding and the kids who are missing and or dead or presumed dead. And he tweeted, maybe the kids weren't fit for camping near rivers if they couldn't swim. Let me do this one more time. Maybe the kids weren't fit for camping near the river if they couldn't swim. There are kids who are dead, parents who are grieving, kids who are missing and presumed dead. Those parents are in a state of panic. And Destiny decides to come in and suggest that these kids maybe weren't fit for camping if they couldn't swim. Stephen, you unbelievably callous, ignorant jackass. The water rose 26 feet in 45 minutes, you dumb motherfucker. It ripped mobile homes from their frames and bent the frames around trees and other structures. The sheer mass of water and volume and speed with which it came in was astonishing. Trained search and rescue swimmers would have had difficulty staying alive, let alone doing anything to rescue people in the midst of all this. You have zero empathy, zero compassion, zero consideration of the harsh aspects of reality, and you have 0 minutes evidently spent saying, do I know enough about this to comment? Because you clearly don't, or you don't care. Either Destiny is a disgusting ghoul, or he's just trying to boost engagement by stoking anger and outrage, which I guess makes him a disgusting ghoul anyway. So we can add him to the list of people that nobody should be supporting or paying attention to or talking about, because the omni-liberal is an omni-fuckhead. I also spent some of the week arguing with folks who were running around claiming that religion is mental illness. It's not. That claim isn't even worth most people's time. I produced a video on my channel to talk about it. I shared this video with the people that I was arguing with and calling out. Um, it goes through both the science behind mental illness and how you're going to need to reference the DSM, and how nobody who's qualified to diagnose mental illness would ever be doing it in a post on social media, because that would violate the basic principles of their job that they're qualified to do, which means it's a bunch of know-nothing people running around taking their simpleton, oversimplified view and trying to pretend that they've addressed something serious. I used to be religious, seriously religious. Was I mentally ill? Did I get over it by sitting around thinking about epistemology? Is sitting around thinking about philosophy a cure for mental illness? This dishonest attempt to use mental illness in order to disparage people who are religious is a way of avoiding having to do the work of understanding the actual subjects involved, and without considering who else you're trampling on. Not only, first of all, mental illness isn't anybody's fault. It shouldn't be tossed around as a pejorative. It shouldn't be used as a weapon. But when it tells us a lot about you when you say, religion's mental illness. No, you holier than thou condescending jackass. It is not. It's not in the DSM. Well, it could be delusions. Religion isn't necessarily strong delusions. And while religion may accompany mental illnesses, so does atheism, so does secular humanism. The number of people involved, go around and watch your atheist, skeptic, humanist YouTubers. A good chunk of them have a mental illness or a condition of some sort or another. You do realize mental illness is a broad thing that includes things like anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, borderline personality disorder, autism. I mean, there's tons of different categories of either mental illness or mental aberrations or mental defects or conditions, etc., none of which are equivalent to, hey, I was indoctrinated or became convinced by bad evidence to believe that there is an invisible, intangible person who exists outside of space-time but interacts with it in order to create it and do this other stuff. You can laugh and you can mock and you can say it's irrational, and I won't say a word. But when you start using mentally ill people as a prop, you've lost the plot. If you're going to run around disparaging people and think that you've accomplished something when you are factually incorrect, you're the one with the problem. Meanwhile, I put that sort of religionism into illness right up there on a par with using the R slur. There's no problem with saying something like, the progress on this project was retarded by their efforts. But it's probably better to say something like hindered or stalled, because those are synonyms that haven't also been weaponized against people with not just mental illness, but specific conditions. There are better options than the long version, but the short version of the word that is weaponized at people, that just needs to end. It's cruel and lazy and inaccurate. And you don't need to find another word. If you really want something, irrational, unreasonable, those things get to the heart of what's going on, because the irrationality and the unreasonableness may in fact be because of a mental defect, illness, or aberration, or it could be the result of indoctrination. Instead of saying what the cause is and providing us absolutely nothing of substance to actually engage with, there are people that are just, let's just write it off as mental illness. Ha ha ha, I did it. I'm way better than those people. And even after sharing with them the video that I produced on this, one of them tried to just tell me I was wrong. And despite my claims, he is an intellectual and an empathetic humanist. Well, in the history of the world, no one who describes themselves unironically as an intellectual has ever been remotely impressive. They're right up there with the folks who blather on about their IQ. And you don't get to be an intellectual who is actually an empathetic humanist by ignoring the science and empathy and understanding involved in the subjects and opting instead for the simple-minded, pejorative dismissal of religion is mental illness. Are there mentally ill people who buy into religions? Yes. And conspiracy theories and humanism and atheism. I used to have a t-shirt years and years ago that somebody got me that was like, those of you who think you know everything are really annoying to those of us who do. And it was a bit of fun. It was something that I wore, and rarely, but on occasion, in a world where you could have fun, where the truth still mattered, where evidence mattered. We live in a different world now. But I'm starting to think that I need a new version of that t-shirt to specifically wear to atheist conventions and to gatherings of secular intellectuals with incredibly high IQs, just to see who bites and who's desperately in need of some humbling. And if it turns out that it's me who's desperately in need of some humbling, the number is 720-619-2288. You're free to come call in and explain to me exactly why I'm wrong. And you can also call in and explain why we should agree with you about gods, about the supernatural, about your political positions. Those are the things that I was hung up on this week. I don't know that either of them are significant enough in the grand scheme of things for other people to be worried about. It's more like, hey, here's some thoughts. Look, Destiny said something awful, but water's wet. And some other people are being silly and disparaging with regard to religion and mental illness. And that's been happening over and over for ages. But I'm a little separated from the rest of the folks in reality. I get to hang out with you guys here on Wednesdays and do some other shows on Sundays. And then I spend my time either studying, working, or trying to find a way to avoid studying and working to kind of rest my brain a bit. So today, I brought in front of the show Brady Goodwin, and I am more interested in what Brady's actually hung up on, and how is your life going? How are you surviving in this new post-truth world?
Well, did you say post-truth?
That's what it feels like to me.
Well, here's the funny thing. You cut out on my end when you said that, but I just knew what you were talking about. Yeah, man, it's tough. It really is tough. I just started doing a segment on my channel called Conversations with Christians. And I had a guest on. He may be watching the show now. He used to frequent my channel just to say, hey, how you guys doing? He would come on and say, praise God, and can I come on your channel? So he was the first Christian I brought onto the channel. And nice. Unbeknownst to me, he was a very almost progressive Christian, because a lot of the things that he was saying, I was like, man, when I was a Christian, I don't know if I would have called, but you're saying Christianity. Yeah. And then even a lot of the people in the chat who were watching, Christians, were like, yo, he don't represent me. You don't. So I don't know. It's interesting when you say post-truth, because I'm like, I was expecting one kind of Christian truth proclaimer to come on the show, and I got a completely different kind of believer. And I'm looking at Christians and I'm wondering, how do you all deal with each other? Like, I have some Christians who they want to take the Bible seriously, but not literally. And then there are others who, if they can't take it literally, then they can't take it seriously. And I was more that kind. Like, if you keep throwing out, this is literal, that's not literal, that's not literal, at what point can you believe it anymore? And so the world is not just post-truth. I would challenge the believer. I think the believer is living in a post-truth bubble, and then bringing that non-truth out to the world, making the world post-truth, if you could say that. So I don't know. I'm surviving, but I'm scratching my head and racking my brain to try to survive in it.
I think you and I are similar in the fact that both of us were in a position where it was absurd to me to think that there were, yes, of course, there are things in the Bible that you don't take literally, but they're kind of obvious on a plain reading that this is
Right.
a,
Right.
here's a homily, here's this,
Mhm.
here's a moral lesson, here's a little play. But it's like there are other things that were portrayed as real. Like, did the sun stand still in the sky? Because there's no evidence for that, and there's no way that that seems remotely reasonable. It's asked to be, I mean, if there is in fact a God, then I have, that's within God's purview of what God can supposedly do. If he can, make a universe and all the rules for it, then he can
Right.
violate it, and that's fine. Strange that we just have a story and don't have evidence. But if somebody comes along and says, "Oh, no, that didn't literally happen,"
Yeah.
um, that's somebody telling a story and amplifying it or exaggerating it to show the power of God and how God, prolonged it. I mean, you might as well be saying, God stopped time. Okay,
Mm.
that's cool, except there'd be no way to tell. I mean, if we all stop along with it and said, no, God stopped time, but let us keep fighting.
Mm.
That was the purpose, right? Let's hold the sun in the sky so we can do more
Right.
fighting.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Once you start saying, "Oh, that's not literal," okay, you need a method for
That's the point.
determining
Right.
which passages in the Bible are literal and to be taken serious. And then
Yeah.
you also need the other category for the not literal but taken serious, and explain what it is that you're supposed to be taking seriously. Because if you have this kind of non-literal lesson, what if my understanding of the lesson is different from somebody else's? What happened to let your yes be yes and your no be no? Why can't God inspire a clear, literal, do this, don't do that? If he can say, thou shalt not kill, and if a man lies with another man, and don't wear fabrics of clothing, then why does he need to tell a story for something else? And the New Testament authors tried to address this by saying, oh, Jesus is intentionally speaking in a way so that only those of us who are chosen can understand
Right.
it. And that, to me, is just like every conspiracy theorist lunatic out there who's found the secret hidden message in Harry Potter or the Bible or Moby Dick or whatever.
Well, the thing about it is there's a passage in the Bible that supposedly you're supposed to read this and say, "Oh, that's wrong," right? The passage that says, "And everyone was
Right.
doing what was right in their own eyes." Well, when you look at how Christians interpret the Bible, it's almost as if no, everyone can interpret it rightly in their own eyes, and you almost can't find two who will agree. And so, yeah, that's sort of that's why I say it's a post-truth religion in a lot of ways, claiming to be the truth.
Yeah, it's like some of them don't know the history that
Mm.
when Martin Luther nailed his protest to the door of the church, it was because he was declaring, I don't need the church or priest to read the book for me and to me and tell me what it means. I
Mm.
can have a personal relationship with the risen Christ. The book suggests I can do this.
Mm.
The Holy Spirit should be my guide on behalf of God to understanding this, not some priest. Let God be true and every man a liar. And
Mm.
all of that grounding
Wow.
was there. But what do you do? How do you demonstrate once you do that, once you take away the authority of the church? And now Brady and I have left the church authority, and Brady starts a church and I start a church, and we're preaching different things in our
Yeah.
congregations because we both understand this better than the people in the pews. They go along with us. And then all of a sudden, our word becomes co equal with God's word, whether there's a God or not.
Think about what you're saying, Matt. The church was more unified before Christians, with their indwelling Holy Spirit, were able to interpret the Bible on their own.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane. The moment Luther gave the license, A, take your Bible home, read it for yourself, the church became more splintered than it had ever been.
It's
That should
actually
tell you something
terrible.
about the nature of the religion.
The game, I don't know, a telephone where
Yeah.
you tell somebody something, they whisper it, it goes on down to them. The whole reason that game is fun and funny is because you only have information, you only have access to what the last person told you and
Mm-hmm.
then you only get to share it one time, and that changes the message over time. If you took everybody in a chain of 100 people playing telephone, and instead of passing the message along, which is what the church did as a position of authority, instead, you just hand all of them the message. Normally, you would expect greater unity and agreement when all of us have access to the message.
How about that? Yeah.
But in religion, what you get is the opposite. You get greater diversity when you allow people to do that. Why isn't God standing by and making sure that his word doesn't return void?
Yeah.
The Bible's a mess.
Purple monkey dishwasher, indeed. Somebody in the chat.
That's right.
said the Simpsons line there. Indeed.
Maybe somebody in chat will be able to help us make some sense of the Bible, but maybe there's not going to be anybody who wants to try to address the Bible at all. But if you're ready, we've got some calls, and I'll put the calls on, and I'll participate in everything. But feel free to drive and ask as many questions as you want. And I'm going to try to maintain my zen, even though I lost it on Sunday's show for sure.
I didn't see that one.
Yeah, it was bad. I mean, I don't mind calling Destiny a motherfucker, but when I'm doing it to callers because they won't answer the simple question after 12 times, yeah, I'm definitely losing my zen.
Can I just give you some flowers publicly that I gave you privately after I saw your episode with David Packman? There was one caller where I just was like, I knew you were going to explode. I just knew it. And you were so calm. You were so peaceful. You were so like just patient. I said, yo, who is this guy? And then at the end of the episode, you said you've been trying to, be more patient and more. But it was beautiful to watch, man, just to see you patiently wait, but still tell the person, like, hey, this doesn't make any sense. And what you're doing is like, I don't know. I loved it. And so I just want to give you your flowers.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
It does. It takes some effort, but the only thing I'm really trying to do is I'm in a position of power here. I've got the mute button and, the camera, everything else. And I'm trying to, even though the callers don't tend to be at the same level as someone that I'm doing like a paid public debate, I don't know the subject as well. In my head now, I'm just trying to treat them as if that was the case, as if they know more about this than I do. And so then the test becomes, can they explain it in a way that I can understand it? Because if they can't, then it's a waste of everybody's time. But we'll see how it goes.
All right.
All right. We're going to go to callers now. Just as a reminder, this is the Wednesday night show. We'll probably run a couple more hours, and we will read all super chats over $10 after we're done taking the calls. If you want to support what we do here on the Line Network, not only can you like and subscribe and join the channel, but you can go to patreon.com/calltheline and support us there. And excuse me, I got hiccupy burp things all of a sudden. You can go to linemerch.com and get your own merchandise that is exclusive to the Line. This program airs on Wednesday nights. On Thursdays at 2 p.m. Central is the Transatlantic Call-In Show, where if you've been called transphobic or if you're proudly transphobic and want to be corrected or don't want to be corrected, you can call in and talk about that stuff and engage and figure out why you're confused, or maybe explain to two real live trans folks why they're confused, and just be ready to defend it. On Friday, as I mentioned, we're going to do a Cus I Wanna, and then there'll be a patron-only Zoom call. So you can go to patreon.com/calltheline there. I don't think there's any Cus I Wanna is on Saturday, but don't quote me on that, because Sunday, we've got the Sunday show at 2 o'clock and the Sunday show after dark at 7. On Mondays, it's Skeptalk at 6 p.m. And on Tuesdays, it's Chewed Gum, also at 6 p.m. Central. All right. Arden, did I miss anything? Arden is busy. So we'll go to calls. D is calling from Las Vegas. D's a theist that says religious morality has an ethical advantage over secular moral beliefs. D, you're on with Brady and Matt. Welcome to the show.
Hi guys, thanks for having me on. This is
Sure.
kind of my first time ever doing anything like this. So yeah, hoping we'll have a good talk.
Cool. So let's just maybe, I don't know how you wanted to do this, but if we assume that you're advocating for something like divine command, or it's something where there's a God being that is the foundation of morality, you're claiming that has advantages over secular moral systems that I might advocate for. Is that right?
Yeah, okay. Maybe I should back up and maybe I should first kind of establish that maybe I'm thinking of religious morality almost more anthropologically, kind of how it functions. We don't necessarily have to get into my like bong rip theology, as you might call it, in terms of what I think God is, or what its existence means to me. But more just the role that religious morality plays in society. Yeah. Go ahead.
So I want to make sure that we're not going to go wasting some time. I would agree that if you have a top-down, forceful, authoritarian thou shalt system, that is going to be more effective at getting people to do what you want. I don't necessarily agree that it makes anyone more moral, because that depends. I mean, you could be, fascistic about immoral views.
I agree. It's not about an authoritarian kind of mode of creating social order. To me, I think it's more. To me, I think the unique thing about religious morality, and there have been some anthropological thinkers who have thought along these lines, but it's more that that religious morality is an emotional appeal that kind of underlies and sometimes overrides logical and rational appeals to being good.
Why is that a good thing?
And I think that's a good thing because I think sometimes being good requires individuals to make sacrifices for the whole. And I think sometimes it's too easy for people to slip into an individualistic, solipsistic kind of point of view where they're not willing to make sacrifices for others.
So, let me make sure I'm understanding this. You've skipped right past whether or not the religious moral system in question is advocating for something that is moral or immoral, and gone straight to the strategy issue of, you think there are people who aren't going to do the right thing unless you motivate them fallaciously. And so you're advocating for fallacious reasoning?
Well, I think emotional appeals to morality are easy to make. I think there's kind of there's a natural synergy there, and I think that's why when you look at what like the actual core principles are, and if you like kind of shed some of the anachronistic stuff from a lot of religions, like the core principles are usually pretty charitable and good. And this is something I'm sure you would kind of acknowledge all the time, but then you would bring up the fact that you should be able to rationally arrive at those same moral principles, right?
Well, so this is the thing, Dee. I was asking kind of questions to direct this. I definitely want to get Brady in here. You haven't said anything about why a religious system is more moral than a secular one. And your only reasoning for advocating it as a strategy is that you somehow arrogantly think that you can figure out right and wrong reasonably, but other people need this manipulative thing. And I just find that incredibly condescending. Brady?
Well, I would want to know, why isn't emotivism more effective than a theist or top-down based moral structure? It seems like you're keying in on what emotions do to motivate someone to behave a certain way. Why not just go to emotivism?
What's emotivism? I'm not familiar with that term.
Emotivism basically traces our moral grounding to getting people to identify what makes us feel a certain way. Do we feel better or do we feel worse about certain actions, about certain axioms? And if we feel better about those axioms, that's a hint as to what the right thing is. That sounds more like what you're talking about than something that a God would have to come down to tell us.
Yeah, I suppose that is what I'm arguing for, is religious emotivism. Yeah, I think that.
Well, not religious. I think what Matt is saying, what I'm now saying is, you don't need religion for that. All you need to do is identify what motivates people. Like, how do we feel about X? Whatever the subject is, cruelty to animals. How do we feel about that? How does that make us feel? You don't need to bring a God into it for that.
I think what religion offers that really facilitates that kind of emotivism, though, is just kind of a motivating feeling that there's like a unity of life, and that there's a form of divinity that that kind of binds us all together in a kind of a spiritual manner. Like, I think there's a lot of value to that when it comes to directing people's motivation.
Do you think that's true?
Yeah, I do. On a metaphysical level, we can get into that if you want. Like,
because I don't think that's true, and I think that's relevant.
I also don't think it really matters to my immediate argument whether or not it's true. But yeah,
I was going to ask the question: if it wasn't true, would you still vote for that because you think it's effective?
Yes, I think so.
So you're willing to advocate for things that you don't think are true in order to manipulate people. What happens when they find out that the thing you used to manipulate them isn't true? Are they going to stick to the conclusion you wanted them to reach?
Well, I don't think you have to really worry about that because it's unfalsifiable, right?
What happens, D, when they find out it's unfalsifiable and therefore can't be affirmed as true, and therefore shouldn't be used as a foundation or a syllogism that results in being convinced of something?
I think what happens is kind of what you're seeing with this kind of new trend of like progressive Christianity. It's what you guys were kind of just talking about, I think, which is that people kind of pivot towards understanding these things metaphorically, allegorically. You turn them into
that has nothing to do with whether or not it's true, or whether or not you're advocating for anything good, or whether or not you're being
it's stories
oh, it does. And interrupt me again. That'd be a really bad idea.
Apologies. Sorry. Yeah, just trying to respond.
So I care about what's true, and I don't want to run around infantilizing people and suggesting that, well, you're not bright enough to not need religion in order to do the right thing. But also, I don't see religions encouraging people to do the right thing. And in the world that we currently live in, I would argue that I don't know how you deal with one religion saying one thing about morality and another religion saying something else about morality. Religions deal with conversion and coercion in order to get people to agree and obey and adhere. And when you get multiple religions that are in conflict, you're stuck. Whereas secular moral systems deal in data and discussion and debates and follow the evidence where it leads. So you're basically saying whether something is true or not is independent or not valuable in determining how and what we should teach people about morality. And I can't follow that.
Well, okay. Well, first of all, I'm curious, like, how much of what we spot in terms of like sort of objectionable Christian morality, how much of that is like the loudest and most disgusting voices getting the most attention, or do we have like sociological data on like how many Christians are just like chill and kind of progressive? Because that's my own experience as a Christian. I grew up in like a Christian Universalist church, and they had a very kind of they had a lot of success by emphasizing the sort of moral community building aspects of Christianity, while also holding this line that all religions are pathways to God and towards.
So they were heretics. So they were heretics because Christianity does not hold that all religions are a pathway to God. The Bible doesn't advocate for that. And what foundation are you going to use for that version of Christianity? And why does it get called Christianity if Christ is irrelevant?
There's a really famous passage where God tells, I think it's John the Baptist, do not call dirty what I have made clean. I think it's something to that effect.
Peter.
Yeah, I think, there's these theological outs, there's these ways that we can adapt.
I find it funny. I'm going to stop here. I'm going to stop here and let Brady address this. I find it funny that now you're looking for ways to manipulate thinking around Christianity in order to soften it. Why not just throw it the fuck out the window until it demonstrates that it's true?
Well, I already kind of told you why, and I want to hear on.
No, you didn't.
This. How do you motivate sacrifice?
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. Stop.
I did a long time ago. Can I recap? Can I recap?
Stop.
What I said? No.
Stop. Yeah. Stop. I care about what's true. And you were just about to ask the question of how do you motivate people? And I motivate people with data and reasoned argument. I don't motivate people with lies and emotive appeals.
Mm-hmm. Can I respond?
Yeah, go.
Okay, yeah. So when we first started the conversation, what I was referring to was the problem of getting an individual to sacrifice for the whole, because there's kind of an irrationality and an illogic to that when all you're relying upon is kind of like a secular understanding and like kind of individual self-interest. So I want to know how secular moral philosophy can kind of help people overcome that. If you're not going to rely on an emotional appeal of why people are connected to each other and why I should sacrifice and do what's bad for me for the sake of the whole, even though I'll never experience any good out of that.
Well, the first thing you do, and then I still want to get Brady in here, I'm sorry, but the first thing you do is you say you have a false premise there that you're not going to get anything out of it. When you sacrifice something for the sake of society, you have to do it with the recognition that you are part of society, and therefore you and all the people that you love and care about are going to benefit. You can get to altruism starting with pure selfishness.
Yep.
I can say, I am 100% selfish. I only care about me and Arden. Cool. Does that mean that I should support this policy that helps other people? Yes, because it makes the world better and I inhabit the world and I benefit from it. Why should I pay for education? I don't have kids. My kids aren't going to school. I should pay for education because I was educated and because this next generation is educated and because those educated individuals are the ones that are going to come up with cures to diseases that I'm likely to get. They're going to come up with fixes and improvements to things. It is myopic, incredibly short-sighted to suggest, why should I do that? It doesn't benefit me. The fact that you or anyone can't immediately see the broader benefits, that is the problem that must be addressed. And I'd rather address that problem and teach people to exercise empathy because it's actually beneficial to all of us than to lie to them and say they need to be empathetic because that's what God wants.
Can I ask a question?
Let me just throw this in real quick. Matt just said what I was about to say, but I'll add this to it. What you're advocating for, how do you get people to make sacrifices for the sake of society? Religion, especially Christianity, doesn't do that. Christianity is not about doing something for the benefit of society. Christianity is about doing things for the glory of God. And so the thing that you're actually trying to get people to do, you're sort of doing what me and Matt were talking about at the beginning. You're sneaking in new ideas. The person I was talking about was sneaking in new age ideas in Christian clothing. You're sneaking in sociological concerns. You're using religious language, but that's not what your religion is designed to do. Your religion is not about the benefit of humanity. Your religion is about the glory of God. So I think even your aims are not agreeing with the method that you're trying to get us to use.
Okay, can I ask a question then? So does that mean that there's kind of a hard limit to secular morality where you wouldn't be able to convince somebody to do something that's good if the sacrifice never like kind of outweighs anything that they could experience in terms of the social good coming back to them?
Yes, it's called freedom and autonomy, which are foundational principles. No matter how much you might wish someone would do the right thing, you don't get to force them to, and you shouldn't trick them to, because it's entirely possible that you could be wrong about what the right thing is. But also, the foundational principle is one of individual freedom.
I see. Yeah. So you hold it in as an end in itself to not make such sacrifices, right?
No, I just explained to you how you can justify rationally sacrifices beginning with purely selfish motivation. I don't know how you missed that, and then try to say that, oh, I just opposed to it.
No, I'm not. I don't think you understood the question.
Okay.
I was asking
let's blame me for that and say it again.
No, I'm not blaming you. I probably miscommunicated.
You said I misunderstood. You didn't say you misspoke, so it's clearly my fault. Let's figure it out. What did I miss?
No, I'm sorry. Yeah,
what did I miss? What did I miss? What did I miss? What did I miss?
Right. So my question was, right, like whether if somebody was called upon to, let's say somebody was called upon to sacrifice their life to save more lives, right? That's from an individual perspective. Huh?
Called upon by who?
By a situation and like a Kantian trolley problem, something like that. I don't know. Like let's say you could, I don't know, you could do something to put yourself in harm's way and probably die and save 10 times as many lives. Right? Like, so that's something where there is no social good that ever comes back to you, but it's something that probably intuitively we would argue is the right thing to do. Or would you disagree?
I don't know, because you're speaking in abstract terms, refusing to give specifics and pretending there are scenarios that justify the thing you're talking about. And we can't say that there's a scenario that justifies what you're talking about. And so Brady was asking, who is the one that's saying we need you to sacrifice? And what is your justification for bypassing their individual autonomy?
Well, I think the justification would be a social good, kind of trumping an individual good.
So does that mean that if you find something personally to be a social good, you think you have the right to force other people to comply with that?
No, I didn't bring force into
No, then why are you talking about that? You're trying to find a way to manipulate people to agree with your take on something. And my answer is you need to actually defend your take rationally and as best you can. And if you can't do that, tough shit.
Well, I'm just trying to understand if there's this limit to rationality.
Yes, there are limits to rationality. Yes, there are limits to rationality. What you're trying to do is avoid acknowledging the problems with what you're saying. Brady and I keep pointing out issues, obvious issues. And instead of answering and stop talking, instead of answering them, you keep coming, I'm just trying to understand what about this and what about this and what about this. You came in to claim that theistic morality has advantages over religious morality. And I said, I would agree that if the goal is to get people to comply with morality X, religious morality has an advantage because it's threatening eternal damnation. And it is telling you not that you're doing something right for yourself or humanity, but for God. And so, of course, that's a great advantage. Just like if I want the neighbor kid to stop making noise, I should tell him, your mom said that you need to knock that shit off and get back in the house. And it can be a blatant lie, but I might have done good with it, or at least got him to stop annoying me. And that's what you sound like, Dee. So what is the superior moral position that you feel requires dishonesty to advocate for?
Let me throw this in there too. Dee, give me 1 second. Let me throw this in there too, because it's not just the glory of God that your religion is using to motivate you. Even built into your religion, there's the idea that if you make this sacrifice for the glory of God. And it does end up benefiting the majority of people in society, for instance. You still get something out of the deal. You will be rewarded in the kingdom of heaven, right? Those who do unto the least of these as they've done to, it's like they've done it to Jesus if they've done it to the least of these. Well, guess what they get? They get their reward in heaven. So even your religion is not, I'm going to make this complete sacrifice so that everyone else can benefit. There's still a egoistic principle built into the religion that you're going to make these sacrifices for you. The only thing that me and Matt are talking about with secular morality is we're not going to use myths or falsehoods or lies to make someone think there's a benefit in there for them when there's really not.
Okay. So first of all, I never brought up the negative motivator of trying to avoid hell or avoid.
Well, that's why I went to the idea of being rewarded.
Yeah. And I think what's underlying that idea of like sort of post-life reward is something that's kind of even more fundamental and kind of on a more basic level. It's that where that idea comes from and why it's kind of like shared across so many different religions is because like all kinds of religions and even primitive mythological beliefs, they all kind of base themselves on an idea of there being a unity of life. It's fundamentally a collectivist. And I think that's where that willingness to sacrifice comes from and why it's an advantage. And I wanted to point this out, and I'm not saying that religious morality is superior to secular philosophy. I'm saying that it has this one advantage that I wanted to discuss, which is using this emotional idea of a unity of life to motivate sacrifice.
Stop. Because now you've just admitted that you're not claiming that religious morality is superior. You think there's a strategic advantage, which I conceded at the very beginning of this fucking call and said that I don't give a fuck about because lying and a gun has an advantage in getting people to comply as well. I don't give a fuck about advantages like that. I care about what's true and good. It would be nice if you did as well.
Okay. Are you okay? You seem kind of mad. You're cursing a lot.
CD, I'm an adult who uses language, and you've been disrespectful to me and my caller for 22 minutes without using any profanity, because when we initiated the call, I told you what we would and wouldn't care about, and you just spent 22 minutes building up to the very thing that I rejected at the beginning of this call. Therefore, you've disrespected every other person who's on hold by wasting their time, me and Brady and all of our audience. And yet you want to ask if I'm okay because I said a curse word? Yes, I'm fine, and you're gone. See ya.
Bye.
Wow. Beautiful, sir. Well said.
It's wild. It makes me think that, I don't know. D is, he mentioned that I was going to object to his bong rip theology, and he wanted to avoid that. And so I was like, okay, I get that you are... Oh, hang on. I've got something to take care of in chat. So, okay. Brady, when is it okay to lie in order to get somebody to comply, or when it's okay to pretend that you know the truth when you don't? Is that something that...
Well, it's social engineering, right? Plato talked about this in the Republic, these noble lies, where you have different people in the society who you have these different metals that tell you what your role is going to be in life. And you're using that to motivate people to accept their lot in life, whether they're going to be in the servant class or the military, whatever. You tell these noble lies. But then you also introduce lies about the afterlife because you see the utility in that. I agree. Everything you said at the beginning could have ended the call. Yes, there is a pragmatic benefit to doing that. The question is that how you want to motivate people? Are we no better thousands of years after this idea of a noble lie that we still have to resort to that to motivate someone to do what's in the best interest of the self and the society? Yep. And I don't think we're still there. I don't think we have to remain there.
Yeah, that's the thing I find so condescending. By the way, I mean, we're a little more open to potential kind of bong rip theology here, but the whole purpose of this show is, if we disagree, for you to call in and make a case for why your position is correct. If your position is, as Dee claimed it was, that theistic morality is, he claimed both. He said that he does believe that theistic morality, or his theistic morality, is superior. But then he said, I'm not claiming that it's superior. And I get it. Basically, what he's saying is, I know that I can't defend that I am morally correct. So instead, I'm going to say there's a strategic advantage.
Yeah.
But I've done this for 20 years. I've lectured and taught on this subject at universities. And I have a video up that's been around for ages on the superiority of secular morality. And it already took this stuff into account when Dee was in kindergarten. Now, I say that not as an insult, but Dee has learned a lot and spent a lot of time thinking in a shorter period of time. And I'm incredibly optimistic that once he stops thinking that he's caught onto something true or can make something true or massage something so that it's true-ish because he finds it beneficial, and actually starts asking himself the hard questions that you and I were asking him, which is, okay, who or what is compelling you to sacrifice for the greater good? You don't just get to say, oh, there's a scenario where it's beneficial to sacrifice the greater good and some people won't do it. Okay, cool. Let's imagine that there's a scenario where it would be beneficial for Brady to sacrifice himself for the greater good, or something, not your whole life, but something about yourself for the greater good. You have to demonstrate how you know that that sacrifice does, in fact, serve the greater good. And Brady still has individual autonomy and sovereignship. And in order to do that, all you need to do is convince Brady to do it. What if you convince Brady with things that aren't true, and it turns out you were wrong about what was in the best interest of society? See, this is what happens when we take shortcuts in thinking.
Yeah.
This is why we recognize and identify fallacies. A fallacious emotional appeal, just because emotions are involved, doesn't make something fallacious. An argument is fallacious if it says X is true or should be adhered to because of this emotional thing. It is absolutely fine to appeal to emotions and do it in a non-fallacious way. To say, my position is that we should not be disparaging children killed in a flood if they did nothing that contributed to their demise. That's it. And you could say, oh, Matt, that's an emotional appeal. I'm definitely dealing with people's emotions about children dying. But the case is about how we ought to behave and act with that. And I think it's independent kids.
I think you even made an appeal to emotions when you asked him what happens when the person finds out that you lied to them to get them to do X, Y, or Z. How would that person feel? And I immediately thought about myself when I realized that Christianity wasn't true, how I felt about that. That feeling told me that it was wrong for whoever gave me the presentation of the Christian message to have told me that.
Yeah. It's something I get asked, I've been asked a lot over the years. So for example, my parents indoctrinated me into Christianity. They were indoctrinated into different versions of stuff and it became convinced stuff. When I found my way out, I had to stop and think, should I be mad at my parents for lying to me? No, because first of all, I don't necessarily know that their beliefs are false, although they seem to be, and there's no demonstration that they are true. But lying is an intention, for me, is an intentional misrepresenting of the facts.
Yeah.
Simply being wrong is not a lie. And so my parents and the ministers, most of them, there are some that I'm more dubious about than others. But my parents and the ministers were sincere believers who were operating in what they genuinely, sincerely thought was the best interest of me and the world and God.
Yeah.
That they don't have a good reason doesn't mean they have the same culpability.
Yeah. I think that's what a lot of counter apologists, skeptics are doing online, is tracing the lie. Like, who should we be mad at? Like, okay, maybe not my parents, maybe not my youth pastor, they believe this, but at some point you get back to someone said something that's not true and someone knew. And so if there is any anger to be had, I think sometimes what the people who are doing the work that people like us are doing online is trying to figure out, where does that blame lie? And I don't know, I just think that's an interesting, follow the clues game that we're all playing.
Yeah. All right, let's try this. We've got more callers here. Sam, pronouns are he, him, is calling from California, wants to know, how do atheists account for immaterial things? Hey, Sam, are you talking about like abstract concepts or what?
Like, for example, like a hard problem of consciousness.
I'm not aware that there is a solution to the hard problem of consciousness.
Right, so I would say that it's an immaterial thing. The thoughts are immaterial, and I think that atheists cannot account for the immaterial things.
Can I ask one question to try to help this out real quick? Before we go to the hard problem, because it's such a hard problem, can you tell me any immaterial things that don't trace back to material things?
No, I think at the end of the day, there needs to be a material thing for there to be an immaterial thing.
Okay.
Cool. So let's
Except
take
for
something.
the one thing. Yeah.
Oh, except for. So, okay. Well, so we already agree that you just committed a special pleading fallacy?
Well, it's different, right?
No, see, yes, a special pleading fallacy is you saying something is different and not justifying that it's an exception.
Yeah.
Right. So God would be the beginning of that, right? So everything.
No. Sam,
right.
You don't just get to assert, okay, hey, consciousness is foundational. There we go. Consciousness is foundational. It doesn't need an explanation. See? You see how that completely destroys any hope we have of getting to the actual justification? Because in the same way that you can justify God as an explanation for consciousness and never demonstrate that there is a God, I can just say, hey, consciousness is foundational. And neither one of us has demonstrated a thing. We've just made assertions. So to get to your actual issue, when it comes to concepts, numbers, things like that, I'm not aware of any way to say that concepts exist absent a mind, that a mind is required for there to exist concepts, and they don't exist as things qua things, but concepts are contingent. I think you agree with that, because it's pretty much what you said in answer to Brady's question, that there aren't immaterial things that aren't contingent on material things, and then you said, except the one thing, God. So we're at least in agreement there. How do you account for consciousness?
Well, I would say I would believe in the supernatural, right? And my whole argument is that atheists don't believe in the supernatural.
Okay, so first, Sam
wouldn't require God, and that would require
Sam. So first of all, atheists don't believe in God. There are atheists, I think they're ridiculous, who do actually believe in the supernatural. I don't see how anyone can have a warranted belief in the supernatural. The supernatural is untestable, unfalsifiable. In the entire history of the world, nobody has demonstrated any reliable mechanism for investigating the supernatural and confirming it exists. Do you at least agree with that?
Right. No, not.
Okay. So if supernatural claims can't be tested, how can you possibly have a warranted belief in them?
Right, because it would be impossible to the contrary, right? Like if a thought is immaterial, right, it would be considered supernatural.
I asked about. You said you believe in the supernatural, and I'm saying, how can you believe in something when there's no way to test to find out if you're right?
I mean, I guess you use reasoning, right? If something isn't a material thing, it has to be reasoning. The contrary. Or the latter, right? So yeah. No,
so you can make a logical argument if you list all of the candidate explanations for something, all of them, not just the ones you're aware of or can think of. And if you can rule out all of the candidate explanations except for one, this is basically what I've termed the Doyle fallacy. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle famously has Sherlock Holmes say that once you've ruled out all other possibilities, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. The conceited arrogance there is in presuming that you are aware of and have in fact ruled out all the other possibilities. And Sir Arthur Conan Doyle himself was so bad at this that when he was friends with Houdini, when Houdini would escape from ropes and chains, the ropes would still be tied and the chains would still be shackled and locked. And Sir Arthur Conan Doyle concluded that he ruled out every other possibility and therefore reached the conclusion that Houdini could dematerialize. Now, are you willing to take his word for that?
No, but but like my question to you is:
Wait,
do you think everything?
No.
Everything.
Sam, you don't get to ask me a question when you give me a no and a yes. When I spend that much time trying to get to a point, and you say
no, you're right,
and then you say no and then yes, I don't know what your answer is, so you don't get to skip it and go to my question to question me.
No, I understand. Like we can't just use things to we rule out something. Like
So
I agree, but
how did you rule out a multiverse that is spewing consciousness into our reality?
Yeah, I haven't. I don't necessarily believe in like an actual Christian.
Sam, I didn't say what God. Sam, I didn't say what God you believed in. You said you believe in the supernatural. You believe that supernatural is the explanation for consciousness. I asked you how you rule out the others, and you just admitted that you don't. I asked you how you can believe something if it's untestable, and you say only if you rule out the other things. So, by your own reasoning and admission, you do not have reason to believe that the supernatural is real. You need to go back to the drawing board.
Right, but would you agree that not everything that we know is 100% testable?
I'm done talking to you, Sam, because you don't listen and you're not sincere.
How am I not sincere? I'm trying to respond to
I just demonstrated to you using your own statements and your own reasoning that you do not have sound warrant to believe in the supernatural. And you came back with, but what about? And even if nobody has an answer to your but what about, you still have no warrant for believing in the supernatural. At best, your next question leads back to the only answer we can give right now is, I don't know. And apparently, we don't know. If I don't have an answer, that doesn't in any way add credence to your unfalsifiable, untestable, irrational conclusion that the supernatural is real.
And you used the phrase earlier, you said you accept the supernatural because of the impossibility of the contrary. That is an apologetic sleight of hand used to not have to give a real answer. So now that Matt just walked you through, there are possibilities that you have not considered and that you can't rule out. How are you going to hold on to the idea of the impossibility of the contrary when you haven't ruled out other possibilities?
Right. So I'm saying impossible to the contrary for a material thing, right? Because if a thing is not material, it is by definition immaterial. Would you not agree?
How did you determine that it's not material? Because first of all, you haven't demonstrated that the thing in question exists as anything other than a state of the material, which means consciousness, if it is merely an emergent property from a mind, consciousness is contingent on a mind, it is contingent on material, and it does not exist absent material.
Right, but I would just say, like, for it to be an emergent property, that's kind of like saying, like, water comes from water molecules. Like, water is an emergent property of water.
No. See, this is how I know that you're not serious, Sam, because you're taking no time to think. We are demolishing and explaining things in great detail. And it's like you half read something sometime. The emergent property of water is something called wetness. Wetness is an abstract concept to describe how water molecules interact in mass. Wetness is the emergent property of water, not water. Water isn't the emergent property of water. wetness is. That's what properties are.
But wouldn't you agree that wetness is a physical property, which consciousness is not a physical property?
Consciousness is a physical property, just as wetness is.
How so?
Because consciousness is contingent on the material. It is how we describe the actions of an electrochemical brain producing a mind. Just like wetness is contingent on molecules interacting.
Interesting. Yeah, I called in yesterday about this too. So the same thing, right? So correlation wouldn't equal identity. Would you agree?
Sam, I don't know what fucking bullshit quiz thing you're playing here, but correlation isn't causation. No. Stop talking. Mm-hmm. Correlation isn't causation, but correlation has nothing to do with identity. You're just spewing out words that you heard that you genuinely stop talking. You're spewing out words that don't go together, that you do not understand. So here's the thing.
No, but I'm saying, sorry,
no.
Go ahead.
Thanks. Do you have an explanation for consciousness, yes or no?
Yeah, I would say it's an immaterial thing. And I'm saying that the reason
Sam,
I brought up
shut your pie hole. When I say yes or no, that's the only answer I need. But when you say yes, you would say it's an immaterial thing. That's not an explanation for consciousness. That is a description of consciousness. You can't even tell the difference in a being handheld at a preschool level between explanation for and property of. You have to go do some more work, Sam, and you have to pause and think about stuff because you are all over the map here. What is your explanation for the apparent existence of the immaterial thing we identify as consciousness?
I mean, like I said, there would be a supernatural cause to it, and I would all tie back to God. But the reason it's immaterial.
Sam, how did you rule out material causation for consciousness?
I haven't. Like I was saying, right?
Sam, you don't get to assert that something is supernatural because it can't be material if you have not ruled out material. You are a logical train wreck right now.
No, but okay. If you let me go back to the last point on the contingency on identity thing.
I'm going to mute you now, Sam. I don't know what you're playing at. You're not going to get me riled up. You're not going to bust my zen. But you're also not serious. You're not a serious thinker. You're not a serious interlocutor. Every time you say something and we point out the logical flaw in it, you're just like, yeah, but, and go right back to it. Every stinking time. If you have an explanation for consciousness, let me tell you what that means. You and I agree that consciousness is the label that we put on a non-material process that I view as an emergent property of matter. Although we do not have an explanation for how that works, it may in fact be something that we are barred from actually understanding the why behind it. For now, maybe forever. But if you want to say that the cause of something is supernatural, if and only if it is not material, and we ask you, how did you exclude material causation? And you say, you didn't, then once again, by your own reasoning, you are advocating for something that you cannot demonstrate and that you do not have warrant for believing by your own reasoning. I just want to make sure. Is that clear? Does that make sense? Then don't do it again. Then don't do it again.
There's a
you get to keep having a conversation. You do it again, I will move on to another caller. Brady, what are you thinking about this?
I just know there's a but coming. I want to hear what's going to come next. Go ahead, Matt. Sam.
Ooh.
Right. I don't know if I can go back to this. I'm allowed to, but like I was saying, yes, I agree that there is a material cause that causes the immaterial thing to happen. I agree. but the contingency and identity thing, right? Like, for example, like I was going to say, a TV would need like a signal to display the picture, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the picture is the wires in the TV. Just like how the brain is the hardware, right? And then consciousness would be like the software.
Sam,
so it's
we're
contingent,
done.
But it's not identical.
Sam, we're done. You're now conflating contingency and identity in ways where the two don't go together at all. You are dipping to analogies about TV signals. You have a completely incoherent position. You have demonstrated repeatedly that not only are you not able to justify your position rationally, but you're not even going to try. You're just going to move on to the next thing. I don't have any interest in that, so we'll say goodbye now, Sam. Thanks.
I hope people watching are able to just see yourself in some of these callers. Like, is this what my belief system is? Is this the best that I can do? I don't know how you do that, but yeah.
Well, Sam would like to do both sides of the discussion. See, in order for his confused position to even have any hope of working, he has to define the analogy and define it incorrectly, and then try to squeeze his position into it. So he's like, well, that doesn't mean, the TV's relying on a signal, but that doesn't mean the picture is the wires. Hey, hi, Sam. At no point did Brady or I ever say anything as stupid as the picture is the wires. Your analogy is not only completely flawed when it addresses what we said, but it is irrelevant to demonstrating the truth of your proposed explanation that there's a magic gremlin that runs the wires to deliver the fucking picture. It's bizarre. All right, here we go. Let's try this again. Tony, pronouns they, them's calling from, I think it's Massachusetts, doesn't have language to categorize their belief, wants help working through what they think. Hey, Tony, you're on with Brady and Matt. How are you?
Hello. Let me know if you can.
I'm having a hard time hearing.
What?
Let me know if you can actually hear me.
I hear you, but it seems to fade out. So
Give me a second. Can you hear me better now?
Yes, much better.
Oh, hi. So when I say that I have not the language to explain what I believe, I'm sorry, I'm also very nervous. I've never done this before.
Well, shut up then, because Brady's not going to make you as nervous as I will. I guarantee that. So.
Okay. So I would consider myself an agnostic omnitheist because my understanding of where religion came from, my understanding is that it came from seeing people die and believing that there's something else out there for their friends to be, and that evolved into the different religions that we have today. And saying that there is a God, I don't necessarily believe in God the way people define it as like a magical man in the sky, nor do I believe that it's like this cosmic universal goo that holds everything together. I also am a very strong believer in evolution and the attachment to every single human that we can literally trace ourselves back to. I believe it's called Luca, last universal common ancestor, which is an amoeba. So basically, we are all attached in having our DNA do the same thing over and over, and having people's understanding of a God be just basically based in tradition. So in a way, the belief in God would be the, how would I say it, not of creation of God. Like, I believe it is a man-made concept, but the not a creation. How do I make it sound like it's becoming a thing, but not an actual God, but a belief system that is put into people's DNAs because it's been repeated generation on generation, and I believe it's an imprintation on DNA and people's consciousnesses and like that. But yeah, I would like to talk a little more about that and your beliefs on that.
It sounds like you're saying we believe in God because the belief evolved, or is that somewhere near where you're getting? It sounds like I've heard views like that before. It was an evolutionary advantage to believe in a God, and that was somehow imprinted in our DNA.
It's not an evolutionary advantage. No, it's a build upon of what I would think consciousness, kind of like not exactly God is consciousness. I'm saying as we evolved conscious thinking, and like we're going out, say you're out with your hominid tribes, and you're gonna go kill this beast, and now your buddy is bleeding, like, and you don't know, you see him lay there, and you're just like, no, he can't be gone. That's no way. He's somewhere else. He's somewhere else, being wherever. This will go into the burials that you've seen. I forget what she's called, but she's buried on a bed of flowers that had to be, a group of people had to go about 100 miles to get them for her, and people being buried with necklaces and things like that. I believe death, with our understanding, our evolving of consciousness together would be, would bring the belief of God and the afterlife together. And making that together, that's a part that I'm trying to understand myself, because I've listened to Matt. I've watched a lot of Skeptalk. I am a very strong believer in evolution. It's just like, this is the parts where I am trying to understand exactly why the belief of God is so strong in people. I've got down that, yes, it is tradition. I've got down that it's been going century or generation after generation handed down. But, like, do I really believe in that? Or is it just a concept that has been put into society that I've been exposed to? I was raised Christian. I'm not Christian now. I can say that I've deconstructed. I don't know if I fully deconstructed from it, but
okay, I got to jump in.
Yeah.
So first of all, you said you're an omnitheist. That's somebody who believes that in some way or another all the gods are real. And then you say that you don't believe the gods are real. And then you spend all this time talking about what you understand the history of religion and the significance of and all this other stuff. The history of a religion is completely fucking irrelevant to whether or not there is a God. It's not relevant to. It's not relevant to anything. The only thing I'm concerned about is whether or not there is in fact a God. Omnitheism cannot be true because the characteristics of proposed gods are mutually exclusive. If Jesus is God, then nobody else can be God. That you can't have Jesus and Shiva. You can't have Jesus and Vishnu. That's not possible. Mm-hmm. So at that point, you're now saying, oh, well, it's not that they're all true or all real. It's that they're all wrong, but people are trying to find something real. It's like, oh, the blind people describing an elephant, except it's nothing like that. That is an absolute garbage analogy. Because if you're touching part of an elephant and you're going to describe that part, you're not even describing the same thing somebody else is. There's a fallacy there that equivocates elephant with part of elephant, and those things aren't equivalent. And so it seems to me that while you've maybe found your way out of organized religion, you seem to be really infatuated with the notion that, wow, there's a whole bunch of people who believe, surely there must be something there. How did you rule out the something that might be there is human desperation and irrationality and discomfort with not knowing?
I don't. How would I say that?
Because Tony, correct me if I'm wrong. You already said that you think that religion sprang from people wanting their deceased loved ones to somehow still be alive. So if you can posit that, you almost already have ruled out that there is a there when it comes to a God, if that's the origin of religion, right?
Yeah, I like, these still aren't like firm, like I 100% believe in them, but I can see that there could be an afterlife.
What makes you think? Yeah. What makes you think an afterlife is possible?
I think, like, I know it's going to sound really bad, but I think that there's a lot of people who do talk about, like, I know you don't like this topic, I'm sorry, about ghosts and stuff, but I have had experience kind of like that, and none of that can make it definitive because I can't test it. I can't make it happen again.
Do you believe that you've had interactions with ghosts?
Yes.
What is the justification for reaching that conclusion?
My justification is that I could not explain it in a mundane way. And
so are you saying that anytime we can't explain something, we're rational to believe it was a ghost?
No.
Okay.
It's not.
So now we need to backtrack. Now we need to backtrack because that's the I asked what's your justification, and that is exactly what the justification you offered. So you can't then appeal to, I didn't know what it was, therefore it's a ghost. What is your justification for believing it's a ghost?
My justification for believing in ghosts, I would probably say that it would be based on my Christian thinking, I think, because I've been raised to think that there was an afterlife.
Okay.
That would make sense.
But
yeah.
But the whole purpose, see, now we're doing this. I said, how do you know that an afterlife is possible? And you said, because I've had interactions with ghosts. How do you know you've had interaction with ghosts? And you just said, because I was raised a Christian and believe that an afterlife is possible. You have an entirely circular argument where you just stuck a gap in there.
Okay.
What is your justification for thinking that an afterlife is even possible, let alone real?
My justification. I'm sorry. I can't really do this. I'm sorry. My brain is freezing right now.
That's all right. Go take a break, think about it, and call back another time.
Yes, I really do need to think about this a little bit more, my phrasing, whatever. I've just never done this before, and I'm actually shaking. I'm very nervous.
It's all good. Listen back to the call.
Yeah.
Take some notes and say, why do I think this is possible? What's the reason? And how would I explain that to somebody else? And then once you get it sorted out, call back and everything will go smoother.
Okay. Thank you so much. I love your podcast. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night. That's hard, Brady.
Yeah. Well,
like you and I used to believe this.
The answer is she answered. Tony answered their own question by saying, I'm not a Christian anymore. I've already ruled that out, but I'm still using that to justify my belief in ghosts. So
I don't know if we talked about this before. We both come from that background. We both used to believe in an afterlife. We both used to be Christians. We both used to believe this stuff. For me, when I found my way out, all of that just vanished. Like, really quick. Yeah. There were a few things that lingered in, like, I don't want to rule stuff out. Let me figure out what's possible. And that's why I always ask people, how do you determine that it's even possible, let alone real? What did you hang on to the longest as you were departing or after you got out? Or maybe still hanging on to?
That's a tough question. It's a great question, but it's tough because once the foundation cracked, I didn't hang on to much. Like I went to church for another 5 years, but I remember sitting in church Sunday after Sunday, not singing half the songs because I kept saying to myself, what if I'm singing to a dead person? If he ever lived, what if he's dead and I'm singing to him? And I knew the sinful lifestyle I was living, on the side outside of Sunday. And I'm like, they're calling me up to read scripture. They're calling me up to pray. Like I put it through such a test in the 5 years between my foundation breaking and me coming out and saying, I don't believe this anymore publicly, that by the time I was really done with it, there was nothing. I didn't hold on to anything anymore because I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe any part of it at all.
Yeah. Well, let's try this. Dustin's on the line from Canada. Dustin's agnostic. Pronouns are he, him. Says, wants help understanding what Matt says theists need to demonstrate the possibility of God. How you doing, Dustin?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Oh, I'm okay. What are you stuck on? What is it that you're having difficulty? Yeah. What question did you have that I might be able to clear up?
Yeah. Recently I was watching a couple of just clips from the streams, and you were asking one theist that was on to explain how it's even possible for there to be a God before you would accept it as a possibility. And that just pretty much got me thinking, like, how do you show that anything is possible without just doing the thing? 300 years ago, if someone was 300 years ago, if someone was like, I think we could build a flying machine, and then someone was like, I won't even accept that as a possibility until you show it's a possibility. To do that, then you would just have to build the airplane. So are you asking theists to present you a deity before you accept that one as a possibility?
To some extent, yes. But here's the thing. There's a number of different categories of possibility. There's philosophical possibility, where for philosophy purposes, we assume that something is possible until such time it's been demonstrated to be impossible. There are issues with that. That's basically there for thought exercises, that you assume something is possible. But then there's the sort of epistemic possibility that in the world we live in, given what we know, X is either possible or impossible, and we should only accept possibility once it's been demonstrated and impossibility once that's been demonstrated. And until then, we should reserve judgment. That's kind of the foundation of skepticism. I don't know how to demonstrate that a God is possible, but every theist that I ask that question to doesn't know either, because none of them have made any sort of attempt to show that it's possible. It would be nice to even see an attempt to show, because if somebody says, hey, I don't think it's possible for us to build a machine that would allow us to fly. If you say it's impossible, you have adopted a burden of proof. If you say it's possible, you have adopted a burden of proof. If you say, I'm not convinced it's possible, you don't have a burden of proof, because you can also be not convinced that it's impossible. And so if somebody says, I can build a flying machine, or build a machine we can fly, the time to believe that is after it has been demonstrated. And if we go from that point to the end of civilization and nobody ever builds it, then we will remain in a position of not knowing whether or not it was possible. But you don't have sufficient reason to conclude it's possible. There are things, tons of things, that we not only know are possible, but are actual. And there are things that we presume, based on reason, are possible as we're exploring. And we only assume they're possible in the sense of, hey, I think there might be something like dark matter out here. Let's call it dark matter. We don't know what it is. We don't even know if it exists. We don't even know if it's possible yet. but we need an explanation for this. So let's go out and start doing the experiments. And so there's this philosophical acceptance that we should treat it as if it's possible in order to explore it and try to solve the problem. That is separate from whether or not it's actually possible or not, because we may find out it is impossible. So when somebody says God exists, and I want to know, how do you demonstrate God exists? They will often say something like, well, the impossibility of the contrary. Okay, how did you determine that your God was even possible? And in the 20 years I've done this, nobody's even made an attempt at demonstrating possibility. So I don't know whether a God is possible or not. But I keep getting calls from people who are not only convinced it's possible, but actual. And if something's actual, it should be trivially easy to demonstrate that it's possible and pretty easy to demonstrate it's actual.
No, I get that.
Cool.
Yeah, because like I said, I've seen a few of your guys' clips, and usually I am just kind of, well, you're usually not the one chuckling. You tend to get heated sometimes, but whoever you're with, well, sometimes have like a laugh, and I'll be laughing along like, oh, this, and you're another theist who's making like absolute claims without being able to provide any sort of proof. And I've never, felt any need to call in about that, but I wanted to call in about something that, like I didn't actually, like something you said where like, oh, I actually don't fully agree with what he's saying here. I want to call in and like see what he has to say, And I thought you gave a very good, a very good explanation.
So are we in agreement now? Or it doesn't matter. You can just think about it more. And if you have other questions, call us back.
Yeah. Could I shoot you one more quick thing?
Yeah, but shoot it at Brady.
Okay. Because like for me personally, I came to the conclusion, like for my own personal conclusion a while ago when it comes to God, that because we can explain everything, right back to the Big Bang basically, and before that there's only theories. So for me, God has just been another one of those theories. And for me, I've always thought like, at best, no one can say whether there is or isn't a God. It's 50-50, which is why I just call myself agnostic. Because it's like, is there a God? Was there a God before the Big Bang who set it into motion and then, fucked off? Like, well, it's 50-50. That's the way I've always looked at it. So,
Dustin, how did you arrive at the 50-50 number? Because 50-50 means it's either one thing or another thing. There could be many things. So how do you get 50-50?
Well, I just think if you look at it,
Dustin, I'm sorry. One more. Ahead. If it's 50-50, that means it's 50% chance that's one thing, 50% chance that it's the other thing. What's the other thing?
Well, I mean, like when you were talking about the possibility of there being a God, it's like pretty much everything. I think objectively, it either is or it isn't. So like, either there is a God or there is not a God, and no one.
Yes, but that doesn't mean that there's a 50% chance. Hey, Justin, if you buy a lottery ticket, do you have a 50% chance of winning?
Right, because you either win or you don't, right?
Right, but no, like the reason I came to the 50-50 is because I don't know. I don't know.
If you don't know, then why are you putting a number on something you don't know?
Because I think that's the best guess. I just think 50-50 is the best guess anyone could make. Like, I'm just guessing.
Cool.
So in my personal opinion, whether or not, a God exists, I think personally the most objective answer anyone can truthfully give is, well, there's a 50-50 shot. Either it does or it doesn't exist.
I think that's absolutely asinine and demonstrably false.
Can you demonstrate that it's false?
I can demonstrate that you do not have, even by your own admission, evidentiary warrant to conclude what the odds are that a God exists.
Okay. Can you continue that?
No, I just finished it. by your own admission, you said you have no way of figuring out what the actual odds are, so you're going to take your best guess. And what I'm saying is, okay, go ahead.
And what you're, no, sorry, I was just agreeing with you so far, and what you're saying is,
okay, if you don't have a way to reach a conclusion, then reaching a conclusion is irrational. Why not just say you don't know what the odds are that a God exists? Because that seems to be the correct answer.
I think that's a fair point.
I'm aware it's a fair point.
But I also just think, like you said, right? If I buy a lottery ticket, do I have a 50-50 chance of winning the lottery? Like, no, technically no. There's like maybe
not just
winning lottery
no,
ticket.
Actually no.
In a million, yeah, actually no. There's one winning lottery ticket in 10 million.
No, that's not the case either, Dustin. There can be multiple winning lottery tickets.
Okay, sure, but you know what I mean. There's a very small percentage of winning lottery tickets. So it's a very small percentage chance that I'm going to win the lottery. But
you know what? We can actually calculate the odds of people winning the lottery.
It's either going to be a winner or it's going to be a loser. So that's like kind of the way that I'm looking at.
Yes,
the
and if you keep saying, of a God. And if you keep saying that there's 50% chance for God, you're a loser because you're betting on something that you cannot demonstrate. As a matter of fact, how likely is it that the odds of a God are in fact 50%? Because I would argue that the odds that a God exists are either 100% or 0%.
Right, and the average of that would give you 50-50. I don't know. It's either yes or no.
Cool.
How do you get to the average?
Sure, so it's 50-50. Add 2 and divide by, add the two things and divide by 2.
Sure. So if there's can 9 women deliver a baby in a month?
Can 9 women deliver a baby in a month?
I mean, if it takes one woman, if it takes one woman 9 months to deliver a baby, does that mean it can take that 9 women can deliver a baby in a month?
Well, no, because a pregnancy is a human pregnancy.
Stop using analogies. They are always flawed, and you are not good at it right now. You're coming up with things to show why you're confused. You still haven't answered the most important question, Dustin. Why isn't it okay for you just to say I don't know?
No, it is fine for me to just say I don't know.
Then why aren't you doing it? Then why aren't you doing it? Then why aren't you doing it? I don't know either.
Well,
think on that.
Because I guess I thought. All right.
You don't have to make up your mind today about whether whether or not there is a God. The only thing you have to make your mind up on is whether or not you currently have sufficient information to reach a conclusion. And the answer right now, based on everything you've said and all the available evidence, is that no, you do not have currently sufficient information to warrant a conclusion. So that means I don't know is the right answer.
Okay, I agree with that.
Cool.
Okay. Thanks for taking my question.
Yep, we'll see you. I think I might be getting close to annoyed, even before I just mean in a mild way before I take this call. Well, let's try. So Jeremiah is an atheist, not a bullfrog. Sorry, I have to make that joke, Jeremiah. Pronouns he, him, sees the concept of God functionally equivalent to a cartoon character and wants my thoughts. Jeremiah, what is it that you're describing?
Hello, Matt. Hey, Brady. How are you guys doing?
Pretty good.
We're all right. I'm all right.
All right, good. So, I'm a little bit nervous. So, I'm calling in. I wanted to hear your thoughts, Matt, because I'm an atheist. I value logical thinking, evidence, and
then you're one of the few.
Yeah, totally. And I've developed a personal way of framing the concept of God that I think might resonate with you. and that is the concept of God is functionally equivalent to that of a cartoon character. And what I mean by that is I've developed 3 criteria, which is there's zero empirical falsifiable evidence for their existence. They defy known logic and rules of the universe, and they only appear in their respective media and in art and merchandise. So what I'm saying is God is no more realer than cartoon characters like Daffy Duck or Mickey Mouse. And, I think I wanted to hear your thoughts on that, see what you have for me.
Do all cartoon characters defy the known laws of physics?
Well, not really. I know a few.
So
Superman,
that seems,
fly.
That seems then that one of your criteria is already useless.
Could you expand on that?
Yes, if you say that cartoon characters defy the known laws of physics, and that's not true for the entire set, then your premise is flawed.
Gotcha. Okay.
Also, you say that they only appear in their merchandise. Am I merchandise for Jesus when I say Jesus Christ?
No, not exactly.
If I wear a t-shirt that says Jesus was gay, isn't that merchandise? If I sell a t-shirt that says Jesus was gay, isn't that merchandise that isn't limited to the pro-Jesus group?
No, but what I mean is, they only appear, in like their respective universes. So, for example, Mickey Mouse doesn't live outside of Disney. Daffy Duck doesn't live outside of Looney Tunes. How's that exactly?
Have you not seen Into the Spider-Verse?
Oh yeah, you got me there. Yeah.
Yeah. Here, I'll tell you. You wanted to know what I think, Jeremiah? I think this is a waste of time. That is irrelevant, even if true. Gods either exist or they don't. Their similarity to other things that don't exist is trivial. Hey, you might as well say gods are like unicorns, because unicorns don't provide evidence of their existence either. Sure. You could make a list of all kinds of things. But that's not what is relevant. The issue is, can someone demonstrate whether or not their God belief is true? And there are people who have turned Star Wars into a religion, who put Jedi on their paperwork for their religion. It's entirely possible for a set of beliefs to become a religion, even if we know the origin is fictional. So there are people that argue that being a fan of a pro sports team is some people's religion, and that golf is people's religion, and that Pedro Pascal is everybody's God. I don't know what value there is in this idea, but on its face, it's already wrong.
If I can add to that, I think you're also ignoring things that are true about God concepts that are not true about cartoons. There are things that people attribute to gods that they don't attribute to cartoons. There are things that people do for gods, such as worshiping and sacrificing, that they don't do for cartoons. So you have hit on a few things that they have in common, but what do you do about the differences?
Yeah, Brady and I would suspect, did feel that God was watching over us and had a plan for us. And I know I didn't. I'm going to suspect that Brady never thought that Batman and Superman were going to come and rescue him.
You're correct.
Hello? What was that?
I said that Brady and I never thought that Batman and Superman were going to rescue us, but we did believe that God was watching us and would answer prayer. So there's yet another.
Did answer prayer. Not just would, did answer prayer several times in my life. There are things that I truly believed at the time. I just saw God do X, and I could never say that about any cartoon.
And also, you can't just list the similarities between two things and declare that that means that they are the same or similar. You have to also evaluate the differences. But so I don't know what benefit there is in what you're doing, but thanks for giving it a shot, Jeremiah.
You too, Matt. I appreciate your feedback.
Cool. See ya. All right. Well, that was not at all frustrating. And Arden had sent me a message, and she was like, "Do you want to take this call with Jeremiah?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay." I'm curious as to how God is like a cartoon character.
It could have gone the direction of sounding like you were talking about at the beginning about people being mentally ill for believing in a God. It almost went that way.
It could have, yeah. Somebody in chat also mentioned Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And yeah, that's a good little crossover thing. But yeah, it's one of those things. I get it. In Jeremiah's case, I did the same thing, not the exact same argument, but when you're exploring this stuff and you're trying to figure out how it is that you realized you didn't have good reason for belief. And there are people out there who, when you ask them what are their good reasons for belief, they give all the bad reasons that you used to have. And you sit here going, that they can't have that reason because I just explained why it was wrong. I explained why it was fallacious. So there has to be some other reason. And the truth is, maybe they didn't understand or acknowledge that the other reason was bad, in which case you've got some more work to do. But if they acknowledge that it was bad, then yes, there's another reason, but you may not have any luck getting to it anytime soon, if ever. I don't know. All right. Here we go. Cole is calling from Maryland. Cole pronouns he, him as a theist. Is of the position that maybe truth is not the most important thing, and it may be worth believing for the sake of community. Hey, Cole, if something is worth believing, even though it's not true, then isn't it true that it's worth believing?
If something is true, can you say that
not
again?
True.
Okay. If something is not true, okay, but it's worth believing anyway for the sake of the community, then isn't it true that it is worth believing?
I would say yes.
Cool. Then you should be able to demonstrate that truth. I'm sorry.
Oh dear.
We just got an alert.
I got one a little while ago, and I'm all the way in Philadelphia, so we're all under the cloud right now.
Yeah, we had a tornado warning.
Yeah, this one was a manhunt, but
so
basically, so you think that truth may not be the most important thing, but if it turns out that whatever is the most important thing, if it's in fact most important, then it is true that it's most important, right?
I agree with that.
Cool. So what's more important than truth then?
Possibly community.
Why is community more important than truth?
Because potentially the alternative is despair.
No. So are you saying that community is more important than truth, right?
I am arguing that fact, yes.
Is that fact true?
I do not know.
Okay. Well, if it's not true, should we believe it just because you think it is?
Maybe. I think so.
Okay. That's the problem, Cole. There is no way in hell I'm going to believe something merely because you think it's true, while you also say that you accept something as more important than truth, and you don't know whether the thing you accept more important as truth is true. You're basically saying whatever you're convinced of, the rest of us should believe, whether it's true or not, because you think it's in our best interest. And my answer is, hell no.
Well, I'm only arguing about priority. I'm not arguing about truth.
Why is community more important than truth? And would you join a death cult for community, despite there being no truth to their claims, because community is that important.
I would not join a death cult. No, I would join potentially.
Would you join a lie cult?
What religion is? Sorry.
Would you join a lie cult?
A liar cult. Can you define that?
A lie cult, a cult based on a lie.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
You would.
That is the situation. I think that the state of atheism is such that it is so isolationist and so separating, whereas religion has a situation, a foundation where our neighbors get together and meet every week and talk about maybe being good people.
And
how many shows do I do a week, and how many conventions with atheists do I do in a year?
I'm not arguing that. I am arguing that is not common.
No. I don't give a shit how common it is. The entire purpose. So you know why religious? Do you know why religious gatherings are more common than atheist gatherings?
Tell me.
Because religions have a protected, privileged status in the Western world. They get tax-exempt status. They force people to give donations of 10 or 20% of their income in order to keep them afloat. They do not have to open their books and demonstrate that they are doing anything in the public good, and they get to maintain that tax-exempt status. They have built a structure where the default assumption is that you are a believer and go to some church. And so by marginalizing atheists, they make it harder for us to build the same sort of community. And despite the fact that they've made it harder, we continue to build communities, humanist communities, skeptic communities, secular communities. I don't need to be a part of a bullshit liars community. I need to be a part of a community that values the truth and people. I'm not willing to sacrifice accuracy for comfort. I'm not willing to worship a fiction and pretend that a bullshit story is real in order to appease my neighbors. I would much rather help my neighbors learn that they shouldn't believe bullshit.
I completely agree with all of that. And
I don't think you do, since it's in direct conflict with you saying you would join a cult of lies.
No, I'm saying that you believe that. I agree with that belief. That is a fine belief to have.
Okay. I'm going to stop now, because the last thing I need is somebody telling me they think I genuinely believe what I just fucking said when I was replying to their claim. And when they say, oh, I agree. You are very confused, and it's not going to be good for my Zen to continue attempting to talk to you.
I think you misunderstood me.
Oh, okay. So now it's my fault. I misunderstood you. Thank you so much.
No, it's not your fault.
Whose fault is it? Whose fault is it? If I misunderstood, doesn't that make it my fault?
No, it is my fault. I did not explain.
No. If it was your fault, then the phrase would have been, I miscommunicated. I misspoke. I made an error. You didn't say those things. Instead, you said, I misunderstood. I don't know why you're running your mouth at all right now while I'm still talking, but this is not going to go well for you. Guaranteed.
I miscommunicated.
Then you should have said that instead of I misunderstood, right?
That's fine, yes.
Gee, thanks. Continue.
Okay. It is perfectly understandable that you have that priority in your life, but I think that it's possible to have that different priority where you could be in a lie for the sake of community, because it is the state that humanism doesn't have that same level of community in this nation.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly.
Cole, you're a theist, correct?
I don't know.
Okay, because that wasn't really my question. My question was going to be, what lie are you participating in for the sake of community currently?
Basically just accepting the Apostles' Creed or whatever you want, Christianity, whatever local religion you prefer.
See, this is the problem. And I'm sorry, Brady. I'm going to stop talking and let you finish. But this is the problem. When you don't give a shit about what's true, then you're just like, oh, we'll go with Jesus or whatever you want. Beliefs have consequences, and so do the justifications for beliefs, which is why I give a shit about truth. And there's no fucking way in hell I would do what you're doing.
I understand that you wouldn't do it.
I don't care if you understand. I'm done talking to you. You can talk to Brady now.
Okay.
So you're participating in a lie for the sake of community, and the lie that you're participating in is basically Christianity, is what you said, correct?
Correct.
Do you care that the lie that you're participating in seems to be causing a great deal of harm to many people in the country that you live in?
I care very much.
Okay. So then, as you list your priorities, community is up top, truth is somewhere, I don't know, down here. Where does harming others fall in your list of priorities?
I believe that harm is horrible.
Would you? So hold on. Let's stick to what you're lining up here. Would you join a community for the sake of community that practices lies and harms others?
That's a good question. I would not.
But it seems like you have.
I would. I'm not talking about any form of Christianity that's fundamentalist, that is abusive.
I didn't hear anything you just said. I'm not sure if it's just me.
There's a tech issue.
I lost all your words. If you could repeat yourself.
I am talking about Christianity that focuses entirely on love and not causing harm and figuring out.
That's not Christianity.
Maybe it's on my end. If you can hear him, Matt, I can't hear him.
He said he was only focused on love.
Yes.
I may. Yeah, there's a storm in my area. I may be glitching. And
it's not you, Brady. It's everyone. Okay. It's coming in on my end.
Hello?
Gotcha.
Hello?
I hear him now.
I'm trying to. You hear me?
I do now.
Good. Okay. I'm saying that it can be. I'm saying you guys are probably used to dealing with fundamentalists that believe in the infallibility of the Bible and such.
No, sir.
And,
Cole, we're not talking to one of those fundamentalists who believe in the infallibility of the Bible. We're talking to someone who doesn't give a shit about what's true and tries to avoid responsibility for it by saying they only focus on love, claim they're a theist, and then when asked if they're a theist, say they're not sure, claim that they're advocating for Christianity when they said they were only talking about love. And then when they get backed into a corner, they respond by trying to not only say, oh, you misunderstood, or now it's you guys are used to dealing with this. I've done this for 20 fucking years, Cole. I'm completely used to dealing with everything from fundamentalist Christianity to liberal Christians to batshit crazy bong rip theology woo stuff. Instead of trying to keep putting the onus on us to fail to understand you, do fucking better because you're getting on my last nerve.
I apologize greatly.
Poorly, but I'll take it.
Just, I'm doing a shit job. Of course. But I'm trying to speak from that more liberal or moderate or whatever you want to call it form of Christianity that does.
See, this is the problem, Cole, because there's no reason for you to be speaking from any particular version of anything other than what you believe is true and good, because that's all we care about.
I believe that it's true and good to get together every week and talk about being good people.
What if I don't want to get together with other people? Does that mean I'm not a good person?
Not at all.
Then what? Then how is it the case? See, this is what happens when you don't care about truth, because you just said you believe it's true that we should do that. And then what are the consequences to me if it doesn't make me not a good person? What are the consequences to me that I should attend a service every week if I don't?
I did not use the word should. I said good.
Okay. Is it bad if I don't participate in that service every week?
I think it's what people need. If you don't need it, then don't go.
Cole, you are dishonest as fuck. Dishonest as fuck. And stop talking. Listen very carefully. You care about truth when it's convenient. And when you're asked to demonstrate it, you fucking avoid it. You think it's true that it is good to go to services every week. And when I ask, is it bad to not do it? You avoid it. And then I ask, am I not good if I don't go? You avoid it. This is your last chance, Cole.
No.
This is your last chance, Cole. If I never go to service, if I never go to services with other people every week, what does that say about whether or not I'm a good person doing good things or a bad person doing bad things or somewhere in between? How can you determine that based on whether or not I attend services every week?
I don't think it says anything about being good or bad.
Cool. Then why on earth do you think that it is true that it is good to go to services if you can't demonstrate that there's a problem with not going to services?
There are some who benefit from it and some who do not.
So now we're back to the bullshit from the other caller where you think you're above religion and you think I'm above religion, but those other little peons, they need to go to services to keep them in line. That is the most condescending bullshit I've ever heard. And for it to come from someone who doesn't care about truth makes it even more offensive.
Okay.
One last question for you, Cole. If you can have a gathering with people, a community based on truth, or a gathering with people, a community based on lies, which would you prefer?
Oh my God, I love truth.
We couldn't understand anything. There's a technical glitch. So just answer that again, please.
I would love a community based on truth.
Cool. You know, there are communities based on truth, right?
I have seeked them out and I do not see them.
Okay. You never hung out with skeptics, with secular humanists?
Yes, I have.
Maybe the problem is that you are sufficiently unfamiliar with truth that you don't see the value of it and recognize it when it's right in front of your face.
I think it's very beneficial if the skeptic community had more community, but they do not.
Hey, Cole, does the skeptic community get more community by people who genuinely give a shit about the truth, engaging with them, or does the skeptic community get more community? Does that community get bigger by people like you deciding they don't give a shit about truth and the community's not big enough, so they're going to hang out with liars that are harming the world? Which of those improves the size of the skeptic community?
The former.
Yes, you're part of the problem. You are like one of many of the people who say, oh, there's not a big enough community, so I'm not going to participate. This is one of the problems for years. Why is the atheist community just a bunch of bearded white dudes? Because
that's a great
people
question.
stop talking. Because people like Brady had to be brave enough to come hang out with the rest of us in order for other people who are of different ethnicities, and people like Mandisa had to come, and there had to be women who showed up in order to make other people feel comfortable. I'm sorry that nobody's made you feel comfortable. Maybe if you stopped suggesting that the truth isn't as important as community, while you shit on the very community that offers both, things would get better. Work on that.
Well said.
Can you give me advice?
Nope. I'm moving on. Mary from Canada, pronouns are fair or she, her, has an answer to why suffering could exist in a world with a benevolent God. Oh boy, so you're going to solve the
Odyssey,
the problem of evil? Okay. Hey, Mary, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing all right. How are you?
Yeah, there's there's some, I think, weather messing with some of the audio, so it's a little jittery. So let's try to keep this pretty straightforward. I don't think that I don't think that I need an explanation for why suffering could exist in a world with a benevolent God if that God is also incapable of stopping it. So if that's your reason, we're already in agreement. If not, go ahead.
Okay, so I believe that in theory, yes, like any God could stop, any God worth worshiping could stop that suffering. But there's the choice not to, in order to allow those of us who do suffer to have a higher tolerance for that in the future, and to be more caring about everyone else around us.
Okay. How is it omnibenevolent to permit harm? That's question number one. And question number two is, why do we need to tolerate something if we end harm and suffering, which is something God can do? I don't need to have a toleration for something that doesn't exist.
And can I add a third question? I'll do those two. Go ahead.
So question one, I don't necessarily believe that the God would be omnibenevolent, just benevolent.
Okay. So Mary, I don't give a shit about a God that's just sometimes good. See, this is not a solution to the problem of evil if you're just going to say, sometimes God's good, sometimes he's not good. That's not a solution to the problem of evil. That's a completely different discussion about a completely something else. But the way that you're trying to do it is that maybe God's doing it so that we build some tolerance and can endure more. Why do I need to build tolerance to endure more if there's nothing left to endure?
That is a fair point.
Brady had a third question. Since we finished mine.
Matt, you kind of just got to my third question, which was going to be, so the reason why God allows suffering is because he's going to allow future suffering, and we need to be ready for that.
Yeah.
I suppose the best answer that I have for that is there are different levels of positive experience, and by having some amount of suffering, we are able to reach a higher level of positive experience.
Has God ever suffered?
I would not know that.
Well, then are you saying we can reach a higher level of existence than God?
I also wouldn't know that.
How do you know that there's a higher level of existence at all?
This is also a thing I do not know.
Yeah. There's a great thing in the series Blackadder where Blackadder is talking to Lord Percy, and he's describing the eyes of the Spanish Infanta. And he says something along the lines of, my lord, they say that the Spanish Infanta's eyes are bluer than the famous stone of Galveston. And Blackadder says, have you ever seen the Fanta's eyes? And Percy says, no. Have you ever seen the stone of Galveston? No. So what you're telling me, Lord Percy, is that something you've never seen is slightly less blue than something else you've never seen. That's exactly where we are right now, Mary.
I suppose that is the case.
It's all right. It's a bit of fun.
I do follow the belief that it is important to try to improve the world that we are in as much as possible, regardless of what there is. And I suppose that to help me do that and not give up on my life in the world, I choose to believe that there is some higher power that
can you choose to believe something? Because I don't believe you can choose to believe anything. I don't think beliefs are subject to doxastic volunteerism. I think you can choose to act as if you believe, but I don't think you can choose to believe.
complicated. Essentially,
it's really not.
brainwashed myself into having a weird cognitive
brainwash. So basically, you want to believe, so you've chosen to act as if you believe until you manage to convince yourself to believe. Except that I don't think you actually believe, because Blaise Pascal advocated that. Pascal's wager, in it, he recognizes that belief is not in subject to the will. And his entire response to that objection is that you should act as if you believe, and in doing so, hope that you come to believe. But that's him saying you should fake it till you make it, but you're also faking making it. Because when push comes to shove, you're admitting that you are engaged in an active act of self-deception because you're afraid that without it, you wouldn't be a good person. And that's because religions have lied to you, saying that you need them in order to be a good person. And I'm here to tell you, no, you fucking don't. I'm a better person now without religion. And so are almost all the atheists that I know and interact with who used to be believers for those reasons.
Yes. I did learn how to be like the person that I am during the period that I was atheist. It was the fact that I essentially gave up hope on my life and on ever being able to accomplish anything of significance, and so I was essentially like, I don't have a point to live anymore. And when that happened, I was like, maybe I should do something about that. And the thing that I chose to do about that was choose to believe.
Yeah, so or choose to act as if you believe. But in any case, there are other options, and this is a really good time to remind people, as we do fundraisers for them a couple times a year, and that's recoveringfromreligion.org is there not to talk you out of religion, but to deal with people who are struggling with issues of faith and religious belief. They have online chat that you can do. They have phone services. And in addition to recoveringfromreligion.org, there's a sister organization called seculartherapy.org, where you can actually book counselors who will help you with these sorts of issues without suggesting anything that isn't a scientific and rational approach. They're not going to say, oh, you need to go talk to your pastor. So there are options out there where you don't have to try to brainwash yourself.
You said therapy.org?
Recoveringfromreligion.org and seculartherapy.org.
Okay, thank you. I'll add notes here. That actually might be very helpful for me.
Yep, sounds like really good stuff.
Thanks, Mary. I hope you reach out and check back in with us if you find better ways of dealing with all this.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much for the conversation. I thank you for everything.
Yep, you bet. I mentioned Blackadder in chat, and there's someone in chat that desperately. Oh no, Brent knows he's British. Okay, yes, Hugh Laurie is British. He was putting on an American accent when he played in House. But the funny thing is that Beth, my ex-wife, not that she'll see this, she didn't know that, and she loved House. And when she first heard Hugh give an interview in his natural accent, she absolutely lost it and couldn't keep watching the.
There's so many actors
have two different.
There's so many great black actors who are like the Idris Elba. There's so many of my favorite actors who I'm like, they've gone to the acting schools in the UK, and they're phenomenal actors, but you would never know that they weren't from here.
All right. We have 2 calls left. We're going to try to get through real quickly. Oh, man.
Uh-oh.
Zachary is calling from Ohio. Pronouns are he and Zachary is an agnostic who evidently wants to give a book report and present a plausible idea of God. Can we skip the book report on how belief in God's developed because I do not accept that there is a consensus on the variety of religions. If it's not critical, I'd just rather hear your plausible idea for God.
Hello, Mr. Dillahunty and Mr. Brady, if I'm correct.
Yep.
Yeah. Skip the book report. It's fine. My plausible idea of God, if I could define what I believe a God is. I feel like a lot of people don't do that on here.
I literally asked you, what is your plausible idea of God? For clarity, when I say that, I'm saying, give us a property-based summary of the God you're saying is plausible.
My bad, I misunderstood. An omnipotent, omniscient concept.
Concept? Can concepts be all-powerful and all-knowing?
Is time a concept?
I'm sorry, you broke up. What did you say?
Deterministic. I said, is time a concept? Because I'm almost certain that it's deterministic.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on here, Zachary. I did if you ripped the bong right before you called, but you said that the God you're advocating for is plausible is an omnipotent, omniscient concept. And I asked, can concepts be omnipotent and omniscient?
All-knowing and all-powerful.
A concept, does the concept have the capacity to know anything?
It would depend on what the concept is.
Okay, we're done, Zachary. Goodbye. I'm not even fucking joking. On Sunday's show, spent 25 minutes with someone who eventually, when I finally got them to where I thought they were going to be forced to finally answer the fucking question, I asked if their God manifests in reality in any detectable way, and their answer was, well, that depends on what you mean by reality. So, Zachary.
Jordan Peterson, basically.
If you call in and say that you have a probable, plausible, possible concept of a God, cool. If I skip past your book report, thank you, and say, tell me the characteristics of your God, and you say omnipotent, omniscient concept, for me, a concept is a mental construct. Concepts do not exist absent a mind. Concepts are brain structures, abstractions that are created by thinking beings and don't exist outside of the mind. All concepts are thoughts. No individual thought knows something. It is the product of, and it is contained by a thinker with information. Right. So whatever you took a rip off of before calling, happy to share it with you sometime when I'm not actually here trying to do something, productive with my brain.
Yeah.
All right. Last call for today. Satan's calling from New Jersey. Pronouns are he, him. Is looking for advice on how to deal with religious family and friends. I would start by changing your name, but how's it going?
Oh, it's good, Joshua. Good to speak to you. Yeah, well, Satan can be very thoughtful, apparently, and looking for the truth, since he is the only character apparently didn't lie in the Bible anyways. But anyways, I was in a company of friends and family, and conversation was going on about this and that, and then dating came around, and someone asked it is a female member of family, what are you looking in a partner? And the answer was immediately, it has to be a man fearing God. And then immediately,
I think you mean a God-fearing man.
Yeah, exactly, right. It just broke a string inside, and I didn't want to jump right away and chew on their throat, obviously, for that, because it's their problem, their issue.
Okay.
But nevertheless,
Satan,
would you formulate? Yeah, go ahead.
For clarity, English isn't your first language, right? Because you're using.
It is not.
Okay, that's fine. Your English is better than my whatever the hell your native language is, but you're stumbling over some idioms, and it's kind of fun. Why do you care?
That's why I'm calling for formulate that better. Yes. Go ahead, please.
Why do you care what someone else's perspective is on who they seek in a partner?
I wouldn't, but the political climate as of late is of a certain, shades to it, and I think it's kind of a problem when someone only thinks of that, and it's just kind of that layer of society that self-perpetuates, and there's no exit from that. If someone only focuses on that part.
No. How do you know they're only focusing on that part?
Yeah.
So I don't know that they're only focusing on that. If somebody asks me, what do you look for in a partner? Amongst the top things on my list, not necessarily the top and not the only thing, I won't date a theist.
Okay.
Is that a problem?
It is not.
Then it shouldn't be a problem if somebody only wants to date a theist.
I guess I immediately thought about that in terms of patriarchal society that we.
You think everybody who's God-fearing wants to subjugate women and think whites are superior and wants to usher in fascism? But also, if somebody said, I want to date a MAGA fascist, would you object to that?
Not as their romantic preferences. You're right about that.
Yeah. I was, when it said you were calling to look for advice on how to deal with religious family and friends, I didn't think that you were going to be calling in to say, hey, am I in a position where I should just mind my own fucking business? Because, yeah, you should.
You might know there's an American idiom that basically says, live and let live.
Yeah. The other thing is that a lot of times people with very, very not open-minded beliefs that add to their own thought of more and more and more of the same thing, like those beliefs, God-fearing, going to church and this and that, whether they're real Christians or not, whether they're real Muslims or whatever they are or not, they're still adding to that. And when a strong preference is we need to support our community of whatever that community is, and it's a community that's based on unjustified beliefs with no evidence, and that kind of is the problem forever going.
Then that's the thing to object to, not the fact that they're looking for a God-fearing person, because you don't even know what they mean by that.
Well, it was explained a little bit further. It's a guy who abides by the laws of the Bible, and it's a guy who goes to church and will be raising kids in the traditions of the faith and will be this God-fearing man and yada yada.
And is a position of the faith that they should love thy neighbor as thyself, or is it a position of the faith that they should subjugate the neighbor like they subjugate the outsiders?
Yes, the latter. That's the problem.
No, not the latter. Generally speaking, at least for me,
mm-hmm.
Love thy neighbor as thyself was the greatest of all the commandments.
Mm-hmm.
And as someone who wanted to be decent to people, I rationalized away all the bad things in the Bible. The Bible advocates for slavery, but I found a way to excuse it. The Bible says that if someone rapes a woman, they should be forced to marry them. I find that to be grossly immoral. And instead of saying that came from God and is a part of Christianity just because it's in the Bible, my take was that is something that the ancient Israelites got wrong, and that for some reason I don't understand, God hasn't corrected yet. The point is, A, it's none of your business who somebody wants to date. B, you don't get to assume that they're a particular version of something that's a problem. But even if they are, somebody gets to be a racist piece of shit if they want to, and they get to decide that they only want to date another racist piece of shit. It's sad and it's disappointing, but find better people to interact with because it's none of your business.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong.
Right.
If you're convinced that they're in a position where they're doing harm to themselves and others in the community, you're welcome to have a conversation with them as long as they want to. But what if they don't want to answer your questions? What if they don't agree? What if they don't, you don't get to force your version of reality on other people.
Well, in that case, perhaps street epistemology approach might be best.
Why?
As a thought. Because
does street epistemology fix things? I've never seen a demonstration that street epistemology itself fixes anything. I mean, I've had conversations before with some of the biggest advocates for street epistemology, which is just the Socratic method dressed up. And the Socratic method is useful. But street epistemology has as its goal adjusting people's confidence levels in their belief. And so if somebody comes up to you and says they're 98% sure that God exists, and you talk to them for 20 minutes, and you ask them again, and now they say they're 83% sure that God exists, you haven't convinced them of anything. They might have believed it was 83%, or been 83% of the confident at the beginning, and simply overstated that confidence, and now you've got them to be honest. Or maybe they're even more confident, but at the end of the day, they're still 83% confident that a God exists. So what did you fix? I have no objection to street epistemology. That's not what I'm saying. You suggested that might be a better approach, and I don't know what it solves.
Maybe not solving, but perhaps not immediately at least, but at least encourage to ask the question that would spark a question within the person about what they are talking about. And maybe that is a beginning of the journey. Maybe not, maybe yes. But maybe it's the most gentle approach without sticking our long nose in not our business, but yet to plant a seed of just, hey, what do you think about that? Is that what do you think? What do you think on it?
I don't know. I could be completely wrong. I want to know what Brady thinks, because it's entirely possible that Brady has a better understanding of this and a different idea from me, and can change my mind. And that's more likely than.
Well, no, I think there's no law that says that you have to engage with anyone on that particular subject just because you find it maybe grating or offensive to you, or you feel like the person might be getting involved in or is involved in a religion that you think might be harmful at some point. You can broach the conversation. You can feel, if you have the relationship and the rapport with the person, to be able to address something and they hear you. Because a lot of times if you're asking questions about something as fundamental as religion, people aren't always going to be welcome to that. So even you bringing up the issue could actually shut the person down, and they close their ear and they don't want to hear you. So you really want to think about, am I going to lose this person just by addressing this question, when really I could just keep this issue that I'm having to myself? Is it really worth it? Do I want to cause friction in my family? Like, these are all the things that you have to think about. Or do you just have to suck it up and know I'm going to a family dinner? It's going to happen where they're going to trip my wires and talk about religion. I just have to deal with that when I'm there. Like, you don't have to bring that up. And that's what I'm thinking.
Okay. No.
I mean, I have friends.
Thoughts.
Yeah. I have friends that I've been friends with for years. I have no idea if they're gay, straight, bi, pan, whatever. And I have no idea what they're looking for in a partner because we talk about other things. Now, I'm not saying I'm opposed to learning or having those conversations, but maybe I don't ask because I don't want to be disappointed. Maybe I don't want to hear, oh, I need somebody who supports Trump like I do. And I would just be like, damn, now I can't be friends with you. And I like being friends with you. But the thing is, if it turns out I'm friends with somebody who's awful, I generally like to know so that I stop hanging out with people who are awful. I mean, if Brady turns out to have been at like 2 or 3 Diddy parties, we're going to have a conversation. But sorry to throw you in the Diddy bucket.
Yeah, no Diddy.
That was unfair.
But no, I will say this. I have 2 family get-togethers every year, Thanksgiving and Easter, where my family will all come together, and there's prayer before dinner. And prayer is a big deal. Everyone goes around the circle, and for a long time, I was one of the most faithful religious people in my generation of the family. And so I was always asked to pray. Now they don't ask me to pray anymore. And I endure the prayer for the sake of family. I stand there and I look around and I think the thoughts of that. But here's the reason why I'm saying this is because I don't look at anybody in my entire family as somebody that I will ever deconvert from their religion. As active as I am on Facebook and on Twitter, I have conversations with Christians almost every day of the week about what they believe and why. Almost every single day of the week, I'm having conversations. I don't do that with anybody in my family. They're off limits because the relationship that I have with them, I don't want to jeopardize that. And so I never talk about these things with them. That's just how I live with them.
Have you ever talked and then it came to a dead end and therefore you stopped, or you just never engaged in the first place?
About 3 times a year, me and my mother will have a conversation. She's a very devout believer in Jesus. And sometimes I'll look like, wait, did I make a point? Is that point getting through? But I only ever so often bring it up because I don't want our relationship to be frayed because of that.
Right. Those are tough conversations to have because yes,
for sure.
They can be very detrimental for long run.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
I will gladly have that conversation with anyone in my family if it looks like having that conversation would be the best way to love them. If I thought that they were questioning, if I thought that if they were struggling with their faith, if something wasn't making sense, or if they came to me with a question, I would have that conversation with them gladly. I put my thoughts out online just to put out feelers to see if there's anybody who wants to have these conversations. But if someone doesn't engage with me on that level, I'm not going to chase anyone down to make them have that conversation because I don't want to lose the person.
Yeah. When it's not with a direct family member, sometimes there's just a little bit almost easier time to want to engage because you're not losing them as painfully.
Indeed.
You're kind of saving the neighbor in a way.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I know you might be walking on the edge of a blade right now. You're kind of dealing with fire right now. Are you sure you want to do that? So my original question about not whether engage or not, but what kind of engagement to possibly have with the person if they're expressing like, yeah, I want to only date or being married to this man of God, and what does really a man of God is. I mean, not always very great thing. It's yes or no. I mean, that's a question, but may not be. And I personally have seen many situations that man of God will be so abusive because the Bible allows for that, or will be just anti-LGBT community because it's all abomination, or against that or that just because the books say so. And where is the confirmation for that? Who proves that truth? So it's that kind of worms that when you really think about that, it really is dangerous, and they will be raising their kids in that, and that's the circle that, in my skeptical mind, I don't want to be part of that situation. I want to be out, and I want to be only living according to least amount of false as I can, and the most amount of truth as I can.
Satan, how involved were you? Like, I missed it. If you were a believer, how devoted you were, or of what type were you?
Well, let's put it this way: was a head of worship of the Lord, and in a church. Yeah.
When you were head of worship in a church, were you a bad person or a good person?
I think I'm the same person as I am right now, but I have no.
That's fine. The whole point is
no candy at the end of the tunnel. No, go ahead.
The whole point is, you were saying there's so many of these ministers are problematic, and you're right, and you call them out, but and you can call out the fact that even the good ones are advocating for things that they can't demonstrate are true, etc. But it's worth remembering there are a bunch of great people who become convinced of the truth of a religion for really bad reasons and are doing everything they can to try to do the best within there. The religion shackles them and makes all of their attempts at doing good weaker than they could be elsewhere. And yet they are also exactly where they need to be to help try to change that religion from shackling other people as well. And so I'm with you. There's a lot of problem. There's a lot of bad. It's very concerning. I've done this for ages. I object to it constantly. Project 2025, Christian nationalists object all day long. The gay church over in San Francisco, I think they're full of shit. I'm biblical, and yet I don't care that much because they're genuinely sweet people who are trying to be good to others. And I don't want to paint with a brush so bad. I will paint with a broad brush saying none of them have sound epistemological justifications for their religious beliefs, but I won't put them all in one bucket.
Right.
But most of them suck. I'm sorry. I had to throw a joke in there. We've got to get moving, Satan. We've got to move on to super chats, but hopefully you've got something out of this. And, I think Brady's point is worth remembering. You don't owe anybody an explanation for who you are. You don't have to respond to arguments. You don't have to start arguments. You have to engage at whatever level you're comfortable with, but also that applies to the people you're talking to. And if you're engaged in a conversation, like I don't make outgoing calls on the show. I will never, I could right now, I could call my mom right now and argue with her about Jesus right here on this show. I have no idea how much someone would have to pay me and how much physical damage they would have to threaten me with to get me to even think about doing that at all. It's just never going to happen. I want to have conversations with people who want the conversations, which is why we have a call-in show and not a call-out show.
Excellent.
Although today's show was a call-out because fuck you, Destiny. All right. I'm going to let you go, Satan. Please call us back if you have more questions or need help with stuff or find a better way.
Absolutely. Thank you, gentlemen.
Have a good night.
Cheers. Thanks. All right. That ends the call-in portion of the show. We're not going to read all the super chats over $10. And I don't know that it's going to take us all that long. I mean, you guys can try and funnel some in. I talked to some people this week who were like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to donate super chats today. Look, that's fine. Don't get me wrong. The show is constantly looking for support. That's why we have Patreon. That's why we have the linemerch.com. And we greatly appreciate the support coming here. You can be a channel subscriber, everything else. Well, we only want people to give if they're capable of giving, if this is something that's not going to be hindering their ability to pay their rent, more than their mortgage, buy their food, live a good life. We know that times are really hard out there for a lot of people. The government is running roughshod over stuff that's going to get people kicked off Medicaid. People are losing their jobs. People who voted for the face-eating leopards didn't think their face was going to get eaten. And now they've lost an eye and are wondering how they're going to make ends meet. We're here to have the conversations, to try to direct people to better resources like Recovering from Religion, the Secular Therapy Project, to help people try and define what it is they're talking about and do what little we can to stand up against fascist Christian nationalists and stand up for humanist and good values. If you're one of those liberal, Jesus is love and turn the other cheek Christians, congratulations. You're not only probably 90% to secular humanism, you're already leaps and bounds greater than the very holy book you point to. The Bible is a grossly immoral, unjust, stupid, harmful book that does not have equality between people of different ethnicities and origins, doesn't have equality between genders, doesn't have freedom. Oh, you've got free will. No. You've got a gun at your head. You've got a carrot and a stick. You've got to do what I say or you will suffer for eternity. And there's no demonstration that any of that is true. And it's not just the case for the Bible. It's also true of the Quran and virtually every other holy book that's out there that gives instructions and pretends to know things about reality without being able to demonstrate it. We will continue to keep doing stuff like this. We've got some super chats here today. I'll read the first one, Brady, then we'll take turns until we run out.
All right.
$10 from Greg Markowski. Hey, Greg, thanks for the show. And
not to take all the wind out of that beautiful transition, but now would be a good time to also remind people that this Friday we are doing our first return to our Patreon Zoom Q&As. So this one will be at 5 p.m. If you go to our patreon.com/calltheline, you can subscribe to support the line. We're trying to get up to 2,000 supporters over on our Patreon. And Jimmy has said that if we get that far, I don't remember by what date, that we'll make Zerba the official mascot of the line.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and we'll be doing Cus I Wanna with Matt and Jimmy early on Friday. So do all that stuff, join our Patreon to hang out with Matt and I this Friday.
This is why Arden's in charge, because I was going to do that after the supers, and by then some of you will have already stopped watching. So Arden's right, we had to do it here. And also, I didn't even know about the Zerba thing. So yeah, if you go join the Patreon, you can get us up over the 2,000 mark and Zerba will become the mascot. That's pretty cool. Thank you, lovely, talented, beautiful, and wise producer lady.
All right, we got $10 super chat. Thank you from Dave Thomas 94. All the politicians that have rolled over to let the fascist F-face roll out his agenda are complicit in ruin.
Yeah.
No argument with you there.
Yeah. I called out Lisa Murkowski, who should be impeached, but probably won't be because Alaskans are cowards. I'm sorry. Is that what I said? Yeah, I said what I said. I meant it. $100 from Puggles. Have to get ready to go to town. This will be listening from, have to get ready to go to town. We'll be listening from the car. Thank you so much. That's very kind and generous, and we're thrilled. Oh, I forgot. I'm in charge of the button. I was like, you can read the next one, Brady, but I didn't load it up for you.
$10. Thank you so much from Ash Glitch. Here's your proof that religion isn't a mental illness. People can deconvert from religion. Yeah. You can't deconvert.
Yeah. That was my standard argument. Whenever somebody tries this, I'm like, okay, I was a fundamentalist Southern Baptist Christian from the time I was about 5 until the time I was around 30. I don't know the exact dates or whatever. I sincerely believed. I was in church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Monday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, and then mission trips and other things on the weekends. And not because my parents made me, because my parents generally only went on Sunday mornings and occasionally on other special things or when something was going on. I went because that was my community. That's what I was taught and enjoyed participating in. I was going to be a preacher until I became terrified of it and ran away and joined the military. And eventually I found my way out. When did I cure my mental illness and how did I do it? $10 from Daniel. Hey, man. Gentlemen, I regret to inform you that the new Jurassic World is garbaggio. Daniel, I don't think I needed anybody to tell me that, but I'm glad you did. I wasn't going to go see it. We are going to go see the premiere of Superman tomorrow.
Okay.
Unfortunately, when Fantastic Four debuts later this month, it will be the first time we will not see a Marvel film on opening day, only because Arden is traveling. So I got us tickets for when she gets back. That's why I took the superhero or the cartoon character thing earlier, because I'm like, yeah, I'm a complete Marvel simp, and I like James Gunn, so we'll see how it's going.
Yeah. Back again, Dave Thomas. Thank you for the $10 super chat. No worries on losing your zen, Matt. I find myself wanting to scream at half of these callers as well. To par.
Yeah, but I think not only am I making a sincere effort to handle things differently, I think I'm mostly successful. And one thing you can watch is some of the other hosts on the line who have a much, they're much more peaceful and easygoing and chill. And that's before they had done a lot of these. Watch them after they've done this weekly for about 5-6 years.
So check back on Seth Andrews in 2030 and see what happens.
Seth's already a little salty, but he is still much chiller than I am. Yeah. $20 from Mr. Boricua 10. Hey, man. Probably in bed by the time super chats are read. Destiny's suggesting that kids essentially deserve a Darwin Award for. What is up with the super chats, honey? They're all getting cut off.
I thought it was me.
Oh, you know what? No, you're right. Actually, this is because we had to refresh the VMix social. I think it's this box. Now, hit send on this one again now. There you go.
There we go. I'm going to go back because there were several others that were cut off. Let's sort this out. So Dave Thomas from earlier says, a lot of the fascist fuckface rollout his agenda are complicit in ruining this country. Yes, we inferred what you were going to say. And Ash, so sorry. People can deconvert from religion and deconvert from mental illness. Yes, we got it. So despite the ellipsis at the bottom, we're doing all right. Dave also did, to paraphrase Arlie Ermy, these people need to apologize to the trees for the oxygen they wasted. Fair. Mr. Boricua, deserve a Darwin Award for simply camping with family, shows he's a bloody coward and an ableist goon who thinks he's better than the rest. Facts. Now we've got everything fixed. So here you go, Brady. Oh, wait.
Yep, you just read this one.
I clicked send, but it didn't take. Now it's here.
All right. 10 pounds from Jessica Doodoo McButtface. Here's 10 immaterial supernatural pounds to the left woke cult's atheist echo chamber. Love you soon. Espion
You don't have
sucks.
to read the last. You don't have to read the last hashtag.
Okay.
$10 from Dave Thomas. Thank you so much, Dave. I really appreciate this, and I appreciate everybody's patience with a couple of things that went wrong today. On the topic of religion, it's absolutely infuriating that now churches can enter the political arena without losing their tax-exempt status, tax the shit out of them. Yeah, we're farther away from actually taxing them than we may have ever been in this country.
Thank you for the $20 super chat from Andy. For my fiction writing, I'm curious what your hypothetical perspectives would be if a man / monster / creature, etc., was proven to exist that isn't a god, but There isn't a God per se, but is practically all powerful, a la Dr. Manhattan, or you pronounce it.
Cthulhu.
Okay.
So I don't know enough about Cthulhu, but Dr. Manhattan is sufficiently godlike in his abilities that I would definitely put him in like the lowercase g thing. Like Dr. Manhattan is more godlike than Thor, who gets labeled a god. But when we're talking about the god of classical theism, this omni-god, I think Dr. Manhattan qualifies. I don't know that there's any power that, I don't know the character well enough. I'm familiar with it, but I don't know the character well enough to know if there's any power that is logically possible that Dr. Manhattan has denied. But others in, like, you get to world-altering mutants like Franklin Richards and Wanda Maximoff and stuff like that. From our perspective, they're functionally indistinguishable from gods, and may qualify. If somebody says, hey, would you be fine saying Wanda's a god? Yeah, I think we could come up with a god definition that includes that. The only one that you don't get to is the notion of one above all. The top god, the premier god. And even within the Marvel comic universe, there is the one above all. I don't know.
Well, the question I would have, and this may help you in your writing, how could you ever test omnipotence? Like, you would have to spend infinity or eternity figuring out, well, can you do this? Oh, cool. How about this? Can you do that? Because to say all powerful, you'd have to go through all of the possible things to know, okay, you could do it. So how do you get to all powerful?
And how do you demonstrate omniscience? Like, I don't know everything, and I don't think it's possible for me to know everything. And so if I say to this being that says they're omniscient, hey, solve Fermat's last theorem, and they do, I have no way to check their work. Somebody might. I don't know enough to check their work. My thing is, I don't care what label gets applied to something. I care what it is. And something that is sufficiently knowledgeable and powerful that I cannot distinguish from my perspective the difference between it and something that is all powerful and all knowledgeable. From my perspective, they are functionally identical. Fortunately, I've seen no evidence or warrant for anything in reality that is functionally identical to the various gods that are proposed.
Yeah.
The one thing I could never conclude is that it's the only one. I don't even know how it could demonstrate that. Yeah. But here's the test. Here's the test that solves Brady's thing and my thing. If the being is in fact all-knowing and all-powerful, then if it's possible, it should be able to make me all-knowing and all-powerful. Now, it may be that it says, that's outside the realm of possible power. And if so, cool, you found a loophole. But if it's omnipotent and omniscient in the simple sense, it can make me a god. And then we would have two of us. And then we would start talking about, okay, what are the limits? Can I make the original God not exist? Right. Can that God make me not exist? Which one of us is actually most powerful?
Right.
But at a minimum, it should be able to provide a rational demonstration for what its claims are. Otherwise, I'm unimpressed by God's intellect. $10 from Ash Glitch. Thank you so much, Ash. The creators of House MD were steadfast in getting an American actor for Greg House, and Hugh fooled them with his audition tape. Yep. House was one of my all-time favorite shows.
Yeah. All right. $10 from Damien Yu. Thank you for the super chat. Give the likes of Aldrich the vote, and we'll be back to cavorting druids, death by stoning, and dung for dinner. Blackadder.
True.
I'm not familiar with the series. Sorry, don't stone me.
It's a British comedy show, Rowan Atkinson. It's fucking brilliant, but it's not to everybody's taste. I will say,
I'll look for it.
I think skip Blackadder the first. So there's Blackadder the first, the second, the third, the fourth, and a couple of specials. Don't watch Blackadder the first. Watch Blackadder the second. It's phenomenal. Okay. Then, if you find you like it and you make it through the third and the fourth, you can go back and watch the first. You'll like it better than if you had watched it first. And I don't know too many people who would disagree with that. But if you're in chat and you disagree, you should super chat and let me know. And if you're in chat and you agree with that and think that I'm dead on the money right about Blackadder, you should super chat that as well. See, they get on me for not soliciting enough super chats, but I do what I can. $10 from Infinite Saxon. How do you view atheists who confidently say there is no God? How did you determine that? And some of them can give answers. Like, I can defend the proposition that God belief is irrational. I can defend the proposition that it's more likely that there's not a God than that there is. But those things are contingent on assumptions that we're not necessarily going to agree on.
Yeah.
My big thing is that the world does not look the way we would expect it to look if any of the various gods that have been proposed exist, and if any God cares about humanity and what we think and can do anything to demonstrate the truth of this. That has not happened. So either no such God like that exists, or that God is hiding and there's some value in us not knowing it exists. Either way, that means every proposed warranted belief on earth about a God existing is not warranted, even if a God exists.
Yeah, I would agree. The idea that no God exists and claiming that, I like to try to have the humility that a lot of theists don't have. Like you told the caller, you can't say certain things I don't know is a sufficient answer. And that's not to say I'm agnostic, but to make that claim is way too strong for me. Yep. $20 from John Kennel. The only thing I still believe is true, which ain't, is that Bert and Ernie were named after the cop and cabbie from It's a Wonderful Life. Okay.
Wait, you believe it's true and it's not. How is it that you know it's not true and can still, like, if I know something's not true, it's impossible for me to believe it? Because knowledge is a subset of belief. Yeah. So how do you have a belief that it's true and knowledge that it's not? I mean...
Yeah, I'm sure this person is just joshing.
Yeah, I think so. But sorry, I'm on the show. I'm in debate mode. I've got to think this stuff through, because that's how you guys can fuck with me, sending in super chats that force me to take things seriously when they shouldn't be. $10 from Joshua Everett. Great show today. Thanks for making us all better thinkers. If only I could make everyone better thinkers, but I have my own limitations, and some of the folks seem to be immune to reason and truth, and some of them are proud about it.
Well, what about God? Couldn't God make us all better thinkers? Why doesn't that happen? Anyway,
exactly.
$10 from Ash Glitch. Thanks. Oh, see, and we actually had read the corrected version. She corrected the chat. Deconvert from mental illness was the rest of the chat that we didn't get to read earlier, but we did go back for it.
Well, I appreciate that, because Ash, I see another super chat from them coming up. So $10 from Hannah Hodgins. Great live today. Thank you so much, Hannah. Thanks for what you guys do. My father's a devout evangelical missionary, and he's about to go build more churches. He always claims miracles. It honestly boils my blood. Tips? Yeah. I really want to know. I constantly get accused of being, Matt, you think miracles are impossible. No, I think miracles by definition violate the natural laws. I don't know. A miracle just isn't just something that's unlikely. In a colloquial sense, woo, I swerved and didn't hit the car in front of me when it slammed on its brake. It's a miracle. Okay. In that sense, miracles happen all the time and are unremarkable. Matter of fact, what would be a true miracle is if miracles like that didn't occur. That would be miraculous. If everything just worked without any unexpected results or unlikely results, that would be seemingly miraculous. But when people tell me they've witnessed miracles, I want to know details. What did you see? Why do you think it's a miracle? Because to date, not one claim, and I've investigated a bunch. I can't say all of them. I definitely haven't investigated every miracle claim. But the James Randi Educational Foundation had, if there was anything that was testable, you could go down that route. But I don't know how somebody can demonstrate this. If somebody says, I witnessed a miracle, usually by the time they finish describing it, I already say that I wouldn't call that a miracle. On the rare occasion where I would be tempted to say, wow, that's miraculous, if I ask, what makes you think that's a miracle? I almost always get a fallacy. And the fallacy in particular for those is almost always, well, what else could it be? Some version of that, which is a fallacy. Mm-hmm. On the rare occasion where they give a justification for it, on further examination, their justification is insufficient to establish that something supernatural occurred. It's just, hey, this is unlikely and seems to violate the laws of nature. Cool. How did you rule out delusion? How did you rule out some natural explanation that you weren't aware of? How did you rule out trickery? How did you rule out this? And the reality is, and we all do this, the reason all of us here are going to object to these miracle claims is because people are using them to prop up ideas that influence what people believe about reality and how they act and how they vote. We do it as well. Wow, I can't believe that happened. When we do believe it happened, we exaggerate, we engage in hyperbole, but we're not taking that and trying to convince someone that we are the special chosen being of the divine creator of the universe who wants 10% of their money and will also save them from the hell that we have really good reason to think, oh, wait, no, we don't. I tend to go down that line. How do you react when somebody tells you they saw a miracle?
Basically same. I want to know details, and my skepticism is going to be offered to them, not to attack them, but to, let's just test this thing. Let's see this whole water. And like you said, how did you rule out naturalistic explanations or explanations that we just don't have yet? I don't even know if I can add anything to what you said. I think that's basically the same way I would go about it. I would say this also, since Hannah asked for tips. I've had to come to grips with the fact that some people are going to spend the rest of their lives believing in and perpetuating this religion. And I can't do anything about that. I mean, I can do what I can do, and I can't do any more than that. And I have to live with that. I have to be okay with that.
Yeah, it is. I've talked about the same thing from a slightly different angle, which is I'm convinced that there are probably people who are going to forever be immune to reasoned inquiry and there is nothing anyone could say or ask that will ever change their beliefs on their God thing. But I have no way of knowing who those people are. And so I choose to interact with all of them as if they are in fact capable of changing their mind on this, and as if they are in fact capable of demonstrating the truth of their claims. That's where I start with everybody the first time they call, is that I'm assuming that either they are willing to care about truth and follow the evidence where it leads and find out that they had bad ideas for their beliefs, or that they will prove me wrong and demonstrate that they in fact do have good beliefs, or do have good reasons for their beliefs. That's where my brain is when we start. What I'm trying to do is keep it there for a little bit longer, even when it seems to me that they've demonstrated that one or both of those isn't true. We'll see.
Ash Glitch back again. Thank you so much. What do you guys think of religion like Shintoism, where zealotry isn't really a thing, but there's a strong belief in animism and superstition?
I'm fine with. I don't object to religion. I object to false and unproven beliefs. And so there are very few religions you could point to that I can't find something good and true in. I don't have an issue with those things. I have an issue with the things that are not good and not true, or haven't been demonstrated, and yet the religion holds that people need to believe this.
Exactly.
If we need to believe in a God, then God better damn well get down here and make sure that we have sufficient warrant and sufficient mental capacity to investigate that warrant. We all know, no matter how smart you think you are or somebody else is, or whether you think the world record IQ, I'm going to be doing a reaction video on that soon. I've already posted a quick summary, but there's a reaction video coming. No matter what you think about any of it, none of us have cornered the market on reason, and none of us, as far as I can tell, have sufficient capacity to evaluate whether something's a God. And yet, there's a whole bunch of people who are convinced. Why is it that none of them seem to be able to enlighten the rest of us? Why is it that it is coercion that is primary over debate and discussion? Why does, the facts don't care about your feelings? So the fact of whether or not there is a God isn't impacted in the slightest by how you feel about it. And yet feelings are what we get quite often.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know enough about Shintoism, but there are people who might say that it's not a religion, but it is a philosophy. I've had people do that with Buddhism as well. Once again, I don't care what you call it. I only care what it is. And if they're advocating for animism or anything else that they cannot demonstrate as real, and this is a necessary component of being a part of this particular community and belief set, then they are in violation of principles of skepticism and critical thinking. And I would like to see that change.
Yeah. Even if it's no zealotry, for me, the issue is, can the belief system begin to harm the person? If they're thinking the world operates in a way that it doesn't, and they've got a decision to make, or they need a solution, and they're going to ancestors or spirits or supernaturalism, or superstition, rather than dealing with the real issues in front of them and the real solutions that are available to them, that could harm them. And so I have issues with that. Or if they were to try to put that on me, I would also have an issue with that. How I would deal with that, it really would depend on my relationship with the person, what kind of harm, how immediate the harm would be, and how strongly they believe I also needed to believe their worldview. That would determine how I would deal with it.
So this next one is going to be a bit of a problem. I'm going to go with, I love when I'm driving and people wave and say hello. I don't know what the fuck these emojis mean.
No. I got it. They love they're driving, and I think they're listening to this on their phone. That's what's happening.
Ah.
Because there's a phone in the hand. So you
Is there?
probably hope. Yeah, there's a phone in the hand. From my view, I can see the blue phone in the orange.
Oh, that's
hand.
not blue phone. Those are lines like waving.
Oh, is it? I'm sitting too far away from my screen, or maybe I need glasses. Oh, you're right.
But it doesn't matter. You might still be right, because I have no idea what the hell. I need somebody in chat. You don't have to super chat or Arden.
You're trying to get me to decode?
Yes, please.
I don't think it's that deep. I think they're just. I think Brady was close. I suspect they're on a drive or something, and they're just like can't really send a proper super chat or call or anything. So they just sent this. But I don't know.
Okay. Well, no matter what it means, Puggles, we're very grateful that you send it and supported us. Wait, it says
this
love
is the
you
second from
guys,
Puggles, right? Or third?
Yeah, love you guys, love the show. Can't talk driving, but hi, hug.
Oh,
okay,
yeah, see?
I'll go with that. We should spin it so that it means something entirely different. That's I'm pansexual, blue, because that's the color of the car. I have
a hand fetish,
diabetic neuropathy, so that my hands are numb.
Okay.
But I'm okay.
All right.
Who the hell knows? Thank you so much. I'm just having fun with this. I have too much fun. Joshua Everett, right. $10. The amount of power required to reasonably appear to be an omni-god is necessarily less than the power required to actually be one. The paradox of proof of the all-powerful. Interesting.
Required to reasonably appear to be an omni-god, less than actually being one. Wow. I'm taking a screenshot of that because I want to think about that later on.
Yeah, I would probably think about it later on too. I've heard something similar as a reason for why we're not in a matrix or not in a simulation, that the power requirements are problematic. However, if the entire universe is a simulation, you have no idea what power is available outside of the universe. So I don't know that that does anything. This one you can read.
All right, 10 pounds again from Jay Sitka, Doodoo McButtface. Matt forced me to spend another immaterial 10 pounds to concur that Blackadder is awesome and don't watch the first, rather first last, and second first, and last not first.
Yep.
Love you soon. Okay.
And also hashtag Espion stinks. I'll read that one for you, Jessica, just because we skipped over the first one. And if you're going to agree with me about Blackadder, why I don't agree with you about Espion, but I'll at least read your hashtag so that when we're done with the show in a couple minutes, Arden can glare at me because that's fun. So first of all, huge thank you to the wonderful, lovely, talented, hardworking lady down the hall who is the producer of the show, Ms. Auden Hart, who will be speaking at two different conventions over this month. Is it the Secular Student Alliance Convention and NanoCon?
Yep. Secular Student Alliance in Cincinnati and NanoCon.
So if you guys are around Cincinnati or Nashville, Tennessee, or can get there, look up NanoCon and look up Secular Student Alliance. Those two conventions, you'll have a chance to come and say hello and listen to Arden give an extension of the talk that she gave at the American Atheist Convention. But one of the nice things about those conventions is it's like the other caller didn't seem to be aware of. It is a great opportunity to meet and interact with other people who share similar beliefs. Because while I may not want to go to church or to an atheist church, somebody might. Because by and large, as a norm, we are social creatures. We not only benefit from interacting with and being around and surrounded by others, but we tend to enjoy it, and some of us need it. Some need it more than others. And this is one of the ways that religions have maintained their power base, by co-opting the very things that make us human, like community, and by working to make other communities smaller and build theirs, so that those people in the smaller communities feel like they have less value and less say in society than the people who are part of the bigger communities. There's an old adage that cult is what the big church calls the little church. And it's true. There's a bit more to it when you get into the specifics of what qualifies as a cult. But that's how the infighting goes. Jews and Christians will fight right up until there's someone for them both to fight. And then all of a sudden, we're Judeo-Christian, which isn't even a thing. We're here trying to build community. And that's going to require some people, unfortunately, I'm very sorry, this is the harsh truth. Some people are going to have to participate in a community where they don't completely feel comfortable yet, so that they can help change that community to make it where they feel comfortable and feel more welcome. So that it's not just this little clump of the same douche bro, libertarian, rah, 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 religion sucks, pat myself on the back, nonsense. And there are plenty of opportunities, and there are plenty of organizations. You can find organizations to meet up with. You can reach out to national organizations like American Atheists, and they have state directors and local chapters. You can also go to some of these conventions like NanoCon and meet people in and around your area and find out what they're doing. Are they having a Skeptics in the Pub night? Are they having a book night? Do they have a knitting circle where they can sit there and knit and talk shit about stuff and not have somebody go, you know, when I was at the nail salon the other day, the woman who was doing my nails, she had never heard the good word of Jesus, and I shared it with her. And I kid you not, we felt the spirit of the Lord. Who the fuck wants to knit while somebody's telling a story like that? You shouldn't knit anyway. You should crochet. It's vastly superior. All right. Nice. On that note, also thank you to all of our moderators, and a huge thanks to Brady. It's been too long. Come back and hang out with me again.
Anytime, bro.
Go to linemerch.com and support the network that way, and go to patreon.com/calltheline. Don't forget, tomorrow is the Transatlantic Call-In Show at 2 p.m. Central. That's like 14 hours from now or less. No, that's not right. I can't do math. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Fuck it. You figure it out.